Good afternoon, how are we? Welcome along. It is Inspire and Be Inspired, our weekly motivational conversations. We are currently in the middle of some really great music conversations. I begin just by checking all of my levels, making sure everything is working okay. My guest can hear me, and I can see that people are joining us on the live Facebook stream. So welcome along. Let me say good afternoon and welcome to Mr. Robin Holland. There's no secret, there's no surprise as to who the guest is. Highly anticipated, highly loved and highly revered, someone who I hold in high esteem. Thank you for joining me, my friend.
You're welcome, Andy. No problem at all. Nice to be on board.
You good? You're good, yeah?
Yeah, fantastic, mate. Fantastic.
Wonderful. Okay, so a very tentative start, as always. I like to just calm myself down, make sure that everything is working fine.
You're that excited?
I am always excited when I'm around you. And the first person to comment is Mr. Simon Schoolboy Phillips.
Oh, bless him.
So I can
Captain Schooly.
I can see that everything is working fine. Eventually, we will talk about the dream lineup on a Sunday on Choice FM of yourself, myself, and Schooly as well.
Yeah.
The glory days.
Never been repeated.
Never. But before we get there, we've got a whole history about Robin Holland, the King of Bel Air. Did you like that title?
Don't know,
No.
really.
Okay.
Lots of people won't like that title, I'm pretty sure, but that's the way life is.
Oh, really?
So,
okay.
yeah,
Well, that's all my own doing. There was no.
I know. I'm glad you're admitting it.
There was no conversation between Robin and I. So if I have ruffled any feathers, I do apologise. But I am actually going to scratch the surface and find out why in a little while. So Robin is one of the most respected soul DJs in the West Midlands, in my eyes anyway. I'm sure he, as a very humble person, may disagree. And we're just going to get straight into this. I always say, people watching live, feel free to comment. I see all of your comments and I will address them as they come up. And if you're watching the recording, also please do comment, because Robin will get to see them. So where are we going to start, buddy? Where do you think it's important to start?
I don't know. First early steps on music and musical interest, I guess.
Okay. Well, let me. I should have really told you where we're starting. Let's find out about you before you get into music. You can be specific or you can be general. The age. The year you were born and the area you grew up in.
Okay. Born in 1967.
Okay.
So a long time ago. And I was born in Leamington Spa, but spent no time there. Just born at Warnford Hospital, which has now been demolished years ago for houses, I believe. But I was kind of a Warwickshire person because my parents lived in Studley, tiny little village between Redditch and Ulster. So sort of 15, 16, 17 miles south of Birmingham, and south of Redditch as well, Studley, the Badlands of Studley.
Was it quite rural, quite sheltered?
Yeah, it is pretty rural. Yeah, it's not really farming country, but once you get out towards Ulster and out towards Stratford-on-Avon, it kind of is more so. Mm-hmm. But it's nice. It's a nice area to grow up in and live. Really, it's nice. Not very urban.
Okay, so what was life? What was life like at 10 years of age for you? What was the most mischievous thing you would have been up to?
I don't know, riding on the back of someone's chopper bike probably, or something. I don't know. 10 years old. I don't know. It's funny because already you're touching on to music, because at 10 years old, I was already buying records. I was buying records at 8, I think.
Okay.
75. Yeah, let me do the maths. 1975, I bought my first single. So I was 8. And it's funny because I do remember distinctly sort of wanting to talk to little school friends about music, and nobody had any interest whatsoever in what I was saying. I do remember that it was like I felt a bit out on my own. I felt I was definitely getting into music, an interest in music way before other people of the same age. I don't know what you're into at 8 years old. What are you into? It's different these days, isn't it, with the social media and Xboxes and everything else,
So back then, so what is your first? You'll clearly have a recognition of something that did turn you on to that music. Someone must have stood out at you.
Well, I think my mother had, obviously, there was music on in the house. I think my mother had George Benson albums, like, before his commercial success albums, really, so that kind of interested me. And I think the instrumental wise, it was always the bass line. I was always really interested in bass lines and the feel of the bass and the sound and the texture of the bass. I really enjoyed. So the earliest records I bought they weren't actual Motown records, but they were sort of Motown filled flavour.
Did you ever ask your mum how she got into the music?
No idea at all. I could ask her. She's still around. Luckily, she's 90 years old now, so wow. I'm very lucky to have.
Well, that would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah, I remember George Benson. I remember Glenn Campbell.
Okay.
I don't know if you know Glenn Campbell, the country singer, basically.
Yeah. So completely.
Rhinestone Cowboy and all that, and all that, that was early memories of music in the household. But I've got an older brother, Roger, who is 10 years older than me. So I guess when I was 8, he was 18, and at that time you were getting into the early days of punk, and he'd, like all of us, Andy, he'd make cassettes, off the radio, like everybody used to with the top 40 and all that sort of stuff. He'd have cassettes, and when he wasn't playing them, I used to go along to the little cassette player and put the cassette in, and it was bands like XTC, new wave, kind of like new wave into punk bands and so on. So I think I've always felt kind of like my sort of drumming side, which we'll probably get to, and so on. That was kind of like influenced with that side of things. Because it's funny, because I never felt like I was going to be a soul drummer or into soul music, but physically, and what I was listening to in terms of wanting to be a musician was making me go towards a sort of more new wave, punky, indie type thing, really. So I kind of had two different spheres here. I was listening and enjoying soul music, even really young, but I kind of felt like I wanted to perform. Sort of more indie type stuff, really. More guitar based.
I get you.
4x4. Drums, bass, guitar.
I'll just say sorry that Emily has just made a comment. She says, "Hi, here he is." She's been very excited to see this chat. Possibly the live chat may be playing up, but. So we're just going to focus on our conversation. Bobby Adams, a friend of yours, I'm assuming, he says, Robin, still a great drummer with a big thumbs up. So thank you, guys. Mate. If the chat is playing up, then I apologise. We're just going to get into this. So you mentioned about the drumming then. I guess we should find out how you began to be a drummer.
Well, again, it's a story based around school days, really. And I went to the grammar school in Ulster in Warwickshire, and I was, I think I was 14, and wanted a drum kit, and just fancied. I don't know. Again, apart from the interest in the bass guitar, I guess I'm a rhythm section guy. Really, I wanted bass, but I wanted to actually play the drums, I managed to acquire a drum kit for like next to nothing, but it was very, very basic. It was a Premier Olympic kit, which is one of the real basic kits. It's one of Premier's, obviously Premier's very well known drum maker, as I'm sure you're aware, from Leicester, based in Leicester. But they did this Olympic kit, which is like a beginner's kit, and I had like a snare drum and a bass drum and one tom or something like that. So I kind of started bashing around on that at home. And then about a year later, when I was about 15, I managed to get a proper kit, really. Again, another Premier, but it was a very nice white kit. I started learning to play the drums. I'm self-taught, and I started learning to play the drums by playing along to vinyl records, obviously, at the time, putting on albums of various bands. And the band that sticks in mind that I basically learned to play the drums to was The Jam.
Okay.
And nod to that is Mr.
photograph.
Weller. You'll see Mr. Weller on canvas, which again, a lot of the soul people are thinking, why has he got Paul Weller on the background, if you can even recognise who it is? But yeah, I was really, really into The Jam. 79, 80, 81. I was really, really into The Jam. And basically, I used to have an old record player in the corner of my bedroom, and it was the wrong side of the room to the drum kit. So I used to have this. I bought about a 15-meter headphone extension cable from Tandy's or somewhere, and literally plugged it in at the record, because obviously you can't play the music and drum to it because you won't hear it. So you've got to have it on headphones, obviously. So I had to stretch this great big 10-meter cable across the bedroom, like it's curly. I remember it being really curly going across the bedspread, and there I am with the headphones on, trying to drum along to like In the City, like the first Jam album, and so on and so forth. And and obviously I don't, again, that's not your genre as such, but if you know about the Jam, it's pretty high energy and high tempo, and drums, bass, and guitar. That's all it was, and Weller singing. So there wasn't many frills to it. So it's proper four to the floor headbanging stuff. And I think the neighbours used to hate it. And I actually had my back to a window, like the street was behind me in my bedroom, and I remember I could look out, I was playing along, and I could actually look out the window, and I could see people walking, and from way down the road, their heads were starting to turn from miles away. They were like, oh, what the hell is this noise like? As they're getting closer and closer, and they were like that, and it was obviously a racket. And I remember my next door neighbour, a young lady who used to actually go to my school as well, she once told me, she was a few years younger than me, she once said to me, she goes, you used to sound terrible, but you sound a lot better now. I thought, well, that's nice. I thought, cheers.
High praise indeed.
Matt
Mansell, sorry, I don't mean to talk over you. Matt Mansell says, fair play, and a grammar school boy. So Matt's watching as well.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
I shan't interrupt you anymore. Carry on.
Yeah, so anyway, so I was progressing at home, and then obviously was interested in being in a band. So a couple of school friends, a couple of brothers actually had a band that they were dealing with and sort of trying to create at school. They were, again, a couple of years older than me. And they asked me to join them. So I remember having a couple of like rehearsals with them in little village halls. And then this is the turning point. This is the big turning point. We did basically one gig. And it was at the Fox Inn in Redditch, right? And the Fox Inn was known as a punk pub. It was like a punk pub, basically. It was where like the bands. It was a good that they the landlord liked punk, and he likes allowing local bands to play, and he'd probably pay them a tenner or something like that to play at the time, And I played this one gig with this school band with these two brothers, and the two founding members of the major band that I joined in terms of indie music were there. They were in the pub that night, and they saw me, and obviously liked what they saw, I'm guessing, and spoke to me afterwards and asked me to join their band. Now, I knew of them because I mentioned to you earlier on, my brother was 10 years older than me. He was at school with them, again at Ulster Grammar School, funnily enough. We're all from that ilk. And so my brother and these two guys were in the same school, same class, I think, at the same school. So I knew of them, and they were kind of like local celebrities in Redditch. They were a Redditch-based band, right? And they're called the Cravats. Now, no one watching this, Emily and Norman Anthony, none of you guys will know about the Cravats. But if you Google it, you'll see they were quite a big indie band, and still are, actually. The Shend is the lead singer is called The Shend. That's his pseudonym. A lovely guy, lives in Brighton, and he was like the singer with another guy called Rob Dalloway, who's a lovely guy as well, lives in Worcester now. And those two, The Shend and Rob Dalloway, were the main two guys, and they were from the Cravats. Now, they're always in the local papers, the Redditch Advertiser, and all this sort of stuff, But they'd done various John Peel sessions for Radio 1. John Peel absolutely loved them. They're like one of his favourite bands. Always featured in his Festive 50, which is a top 50 that he did each year at Christmas, obviously. It's like his favourite 50 songs of the year. And the Cravats were always in that top 50. But I actually had Cravats records at home as a young boy, through my brother and through knowing Rob and the Shen. I actually had Cravats records, 7-inch singles, And obviously, I was very excited by this.
Did you play it cool?
I think I was just normal, just me, really, because I was excited in my heart, because it was a big thing, And viewers and listeners to this podcast or YouTube video, whatever you're calling it, I know people always say this, Andy, but you've got to remember there was no YouTube, there was no social media, there was no Facebook, there was no anything. There was 4 channels on TV. the John Peel show at sort of 10 p.m. on a Monday night was quite high on people's priorities in those days, you know. So this band were like, you know, yeah, they weren't selling enough records to be in the top 40 because they're very, very indie sounding, you know. But it was a big thing, you know. And they basically, their band had recently they'd recently dissolved it, the Cravats this is. And they had this new thing they wanted to do, this new vehicle, and it was called The Very Things. And that's what they asked me to join. They asked me to become the drummer of The Very Things as basically a 3-piece band. Rob Dalloway was was and still is a guitarist, and the Shend was the vocalist, and I was the drummer. And we hired in bass guitarists to perform live. So we had a couple of friends from Redditch, and they kind of joined in as bass players. Stephen Burrows, who was from a band called And Also the Trees, who were very well known in the indie circuit as well. Another lovely guy. They supported The Cure actually on a couple of tours, so they became quite well known as well, and they're still going strongly as well. And then there was a guy called Jim Davis who played with us from a band called the Crypt Kicker 5, and they played bass with us.
Fantastic names.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Bobby Boris Pickett and the Crypt Kicker 5. You take the Bobby Boris bit away, and you've got the Crypt Kicker 5. Yeah. So anyway, so Jim and Stephen Burrows, Budgie, they played bass with us. But The Very Things, if you look at the press and the promo stuff, The Very Things was basically a threesome. It's me, Shend, and Rob Dalloway. And so the excitement for me, as you've touched on, was that they had a record deal. So I'm 16 years old. I'm still at the grammar school in Ulster, and I've just joined a band with a record deal. Okay, we're not on top of the pops, but we're indie. You know, we're an indie band, and we're releasing records. So one of the first things I did with them, they had we used to have this lovely, it was in a place called Ham Green, this real tiny little hamlet near the back of Redditch. You go out the countryside towards Droitwich and Worcester, and you end up, there's like a little farm, and they had an old dairy building, and they'd soundproofed it, you know, put the padding up and cloth curtains and all sorts of stuff. And that was the Cravats rehearsal room. So obviously we carried on as The Very Things. And basically, we started rehearsing to record 4 songs for a John Peel session, because John Peel and his producer, John Walters at the time on Radio 1, wanted us to do a session. So that was really exciting. And then I think we rehearsed about another 4 songs as well to go on an album, to go on like the first album. And that's exactly what happened. And this was 1983 now. So I can actually date this for you, Andy, because we recorded the John Peel session after a few months of rehearsals through the summer of 83, the long hot summer of 83. We recorded the John Peel session at Maida Vale in London, which was incredibly exciting for me. Again, 16 years old. You know, I was literally, you know, 1 minute on the Friday, because it was a Saturday, I remember clearly. On the Friday, I was in double geography, you know, in Ulster. And then the next day, we're in this transit van going down to London, Maida Vale. I clearly remember, I remember getting the BBC trolley and pushing my drums in on the trolley. Again, I didn't know at the time, but the producer of this was, funnily enough, was an ex-drummer called Dale Griffin, who was the drummer for Mott the Hoople. Mm-hmm. That's a band I'm sure you've heard the name of, from the 60s and 70s, very successful band. He was the producer of this, of our session. Obviously, he was a hired hand for the BBC then, you know. And we recorded these 4 tracks, and I know it was December the 17th, 1983. And the reason I know that is because it was the day of the Harrods bombing, which is obviously very unfortunate and a terrible occurrence in London. And it was all over the news, and like the Dale Griffin and his mate that were doing the recording, they had the news on the CFAX, I think it was at the time, you know, on the BBC monitor and whatever. But yeah, incredibly exciting times though. You know, I remember even keeping I was really impressed by the BBC cup, the paper cups. You got the water machine in the corridor, you know, and the BBC cup, the white cup with the BBC logo. I remember I stole 3 or 4 of those and brought them home with me and put them in my bedroom in Studley in Warwickshire, you know. I felt like it was big things, you know, which, I mean...
The dizzy heights. Dizzy
it's nothing
heights.
Now. It's nothing to people now, is it? You do a TikTok video now and you get 1 million views, you know. But like I said to you at the time, I know you're very aware of this. There's no social media whatsoever, nothing. You know, there wasn't even a Channel 4 at this stage, or you know, a year or 2 before. And so limited BBC and ITV TV and Radio 1. And again, there wasn't all the commercial stations, as again, there certainly wasn't internet stations. They didn't exist. So, yeah, there is a fact to that. I was told I was one of the youngest people, if not the youngest, ever to record a John Peel session. The other guys in the band, as I've already said, Shendon and Rob, were 10 years older than me. So they were 26. And it felt like, they're ancient, or they felt they're ancient, but I was 16. And then what happened was, so we recorded that, spent all day doing that, and I was obviously buzzing from it. And then you get a cassette copy to take home with you, so we were playing it in the van on the way home and things like that, And then the wait occurred. Then you have the wait, you see, where like I'm telling school friends about it and like waiting for it to come on the radio. And we got the signal that it was going to be on in January, towards the end of January, I think it was, on the John Peel show. So I remember telling the whole school, and getting everybody excited, and people were aware of what I was doing, obviously. And then everyone tuned in. Everyone was there with their cassette players and hundreds of school friends, and they were waiting to hear it. So obviously, I hadn't heard it broadcast, and it was about to be broadcast on a Monday night, and everyone waited with bated breath, pressed their recording, and then John Peel introduced us, and the response from the school people was incredibly underwhelming.
What were you expecting?
Well, I was very young, so I kind of, Shendon and Rob won't mind me saying this, I didn't have a full understanding of what they were trying to do until like recently, probably. It's very eclectic. I'm sure one or two people might, if you remotely bothered, if you Google the very things and you just have to play 30 seconds of any of our songs, you'll soon understand what I mean. It was very John Peel. Let's call it very John Peel. It was very indie. It was inspired by kind of like 50s and 60s sort of gothic and sci-fi movies, things like The Twilight Zone, TV programs like The Twilight Zone. Fantastic stuff, like sort of screechy guitaring, very like chilling, very very sort of Twilight Zone guitaring, thundering bass that the Shen used to play, which is why we didn't actually have a fourth member, because the Shen, the singer, was actually the bassist as well, and for recordings, obviously. So it was very, very indie, and I think John Peel actually played. Yeah, he did. He played the least commercial sounding one first, which is a track called Wall of Fur. And he played that. And I think half the school probably turned off, because rather than getting the hero ship, I was rather than getting the hero worshipping, I was expecting the next day. I got a lot of funny looks in, because I was in school the next day, obviously, at assembly, and a few people were nudging me saying, "Oh, hello, Rob, I heard your band, great stuff," and whatever. And there was a few people looking at me a bit funny and thinking, "What the hell are you playing, man? What's that? It's a racket." But nevertheless, it was enjoyable, and it sort of, I was on the map as a drummer, really. And then obviously the associated things that come along with that, with a Peel session, are music press coverage. So you've got the three big ones at the time. The NME was obviously the biggest, probably. Melody Maker, which I used to really like, and Sounds magazine, all of which defunct now, of course, apart from I think NME do an online version. So we started getting little articles in, even when you've got a single to be released, you get a record review type thing, and if you did live gigs, then obviously you'd invite the music press along, and hopefully you get a good review. And that's what we started doing. And there was a very complimentary music press guy called Mick Mercer, who used to work for the Melody Maker, and he really loved us. He loved the Cravats as well, the band before, and he loved the very things. So we got good press from him, and he'd come and review our live gigs in London, and we did a lot of gigs, especially in the city in London. We did the ICA, the Institute of Contemporary Arts. I think that was a John Peel week, actually. It was like John Peel introduces various bands, and we were one of the bands that were lucky enough to get chosen for that.
So despite the lukewarm reaction from your school friends, was there an anticipation that you were actually set for big things? That was what you...
I'll be honest with you. Commercially, no, probably. Okay. I never felt that nature of music was going to sell enough records, and it obviously proved to be the case. I mean, we were in the indie charts, we were on an indie label. But that's worth a mention as well, because we were on One Little Indian, which is well known because it's Bjork's label. But when I first met Bjork, because we were label mates, we used to knock about together and stuff like that. Her band was the Sugar Cubes from Iceland. And she just had a little boy, and because she was dating the guitarist of the band, and so on and so forth. And so we were sort of closely linked. In fact, but again, I've had to actually fact check this, but the Sugar Cubes, which was her band, and Bjork supported my band. Bjork actually said, you didn't know that, did you?
I didn't.
All these Belfry soul people, they're thinking, what's all this stuff? They haven't got a clue. Yeah, Bjork actually supported my band. They were on before us, like moving their equipment out of the way while we were setting up. I'll tell you where that was. It was at the Africa Centre in London, which later became famous for Jazzy B and Soul to Soul, of course.
Indeed.
So it was a live music venue with a nice big stage, and we played there. We did. There's a flyer for it somewhere. The Very Things and the Sugar Cubes, Brilliant. And it was just the Sugar. It wasn't Bjork on her own. Then it was just the Sugar Cubes.
It was the band. Let me just say, you've clearly got an incredible photographic memory. Have you told these stories a lot? Because it's all coming back to you quite, or have you just been thinking about it to prepare?
No, I've just been thinking about it because I knew you'd touch on the music side, and it's kind of like it was a big chunk of my life but it was a big chunk of my life, but it was very early on. It was 16, well, maybe 15 to recall it when I was starting to drum properly. Probably 15 to 21 was the drumming side of things. If anything, I think I probably peaked too early, to be honest with you. Really, because I mentioned the music press. There was a review of a live gig. I can't remember where, and the reviewer was very complimentary about all of us, and he said the youthful drummer. I can remember. He said something like the youthful drummer. He's very reminiscent of Keith Moon, who of course was the drummer of the Who, who was known for flailing drumsticks and kicking his kit over at the end of the performance and smashing things up and just being a bit crazy, And again, the nature of the Very Things music was such that I was playing like that. That's how I was performing, and I used to enjoy it.
Did you go off the rails at any point? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll?
No. I tried speed. Anybody who knows me, like you do, know that I'm straight as a die. Even all the years of a DJ, I've never tried cocaine. Are we allowed to discuss this stuff or not?
Of course.
Never tried cocaine in my life. Never even tried it. And the best thing of all that happened is we were on tour in Europe, because the Very Things did quite a few tours in Europe. We did Austria, Germany, Switzerland. We played in all those sort of countries. And I remember we were somewhere. I think it was Germany. And no, it wasn't. It was Amsterdam. It was Amsterdam. Yeah, we played the Paradiso in Amsterdam, which again is still a very fabulous venue even now. We played there, and I think I tried. The other guys in the band gave me a little bit of speed, and we went clubbing on the night after the gig. We went into Amsterdam, and I remember I was raving. I remember it just waking me up and making me feel alert, rather than being tired. Because the drumming performances I put in were pretty exhausting, actually. Again, if you listen to the music, you'll understand why. And I had a tiny little bit of speed, and I went back to the hotel after the clubbing, and I woke up the next day, and I had the worst stomach cramps I've ever had. I had dreadful stomach cramps, right? And that was enough to put me off. I just thought, it's not me. I'm not into drugs. It's not my thing. Never has been. So, okay. and that remains to this day. So, stay off the drugs, kids.
Yeah, Pro Plus, double Pro Plus for Robin next time you see him.
So good question, though. Good question.
Okay, so you say 16 to 21 because I'm conscious of us not dwelling, because this is really important information that we want to share, but we're not going to be able to cover all of the twists and turns of those drumming days.
I'm only just warming up, Andy.
Exactly. So where would you say you peaked? You say you peaked too soon. Where was the peak?
Well, again, the thing I haven't mentioned yet about the Very Things is, so we're only up to the first John Peel session, really, and then we released our album, which is our album and single, which is famously titled "The Bushes Scream While My Daddy Prunes." There's a reason behind it. There's a reason behind everything.
Oh, dear.
I'm serious.
It sounds like something out of the Mighty Boosh.
Look up John Peel's Festive 50 in 1984, and it's in there. It's about number 23 or something in John Peel's 23rd favourite song of the year. And you've got to remember, there was bands like the Smiths around and at this time, and The Fall, who John Peel absolutely loved, and the Undertones and all these bands, you know. And our little old band, we're in at number 23 in his Festive 50. But moving on from that, so we released the album and the single. We had another single. You're going to think I'm really making this up now. The follow-up single to The Bushes Scream While My Daddy Prunes was Mummy, You're a Wreck. Okay.
Biopics. Yeah. Nice. Yeah. I love it.
So obviously these didn't sell greatly. But they made a dent in the indie charts, and they're on the radio.
So the old grey whistle test was firmly in your sights.
Well, this is where we're going. Mate. Hold on tight. We were getting airplay on Radio 1, which is phenomenal. But obviously we're getting John Peel airplay, and if you go backwards through the evening, we were getting Kid Jensen airplay, David Jensen, the Kid, and Janice Long, rest in peace, lovely Janice. And even Richard Skinner, and actually, oh God, do you know, this is when you want to talk about getting excited and being really passionate. I went for a holiday with a couple of mates down to, I think I went to somewhere like Torquay or somewhere. I'm not sure quite where it was. No, Bournemouth. It was Bournemouth. Yeah, Bournemouth. It's crazy. So the very things we've done the John Peel session. The Bushes Scream had been released, so it's the summer of '84 now, and we went to an amusement arcade. And Richard Skinner, who you remember from Radio 1 evenings, he was playing The Bushes Scream when we were in an amusement arcade messing about, playing air hockey or whatever. And so I'm 17 and I'm in an amusement arcade in Bournemouth and I'm hearing my song on Radio 1, and that was kind of like, wow, this is good. But I remember what Richard Skinner said, because it's on a tape somewhere. Richard Skinner actually introduced it and said, "This song is probably the weirdest song you're ever going to hear, The Very Things." And he played it. And I remember thinking, okay, that's good and bad, really, because not everyone's gonna like this, But anyway, moving on. Anyway, then about sometime after 6 months, 8 months later, after a couple of single releases, the Rob and Shen from the band managed to get in touch with a guy called Chris Phipps, who was a producer at the Tube on Channel 4. Now, that really is big time now, because and as you say, that's very geared for our band, because we're not selling enough records to be on top of the pops, but we're the cooler side, if you like. You guys, you Strings of Life guys can have the top of the pops. We'll do the indie thing, the cooler thing. So what happened is that this producer, I think the Shen from The Very Thing, sent him a cassette of a couple of our songs. He really liked them. Apparently there's a story behind that. He was driving home across the moors from like Newcastle upon Tyne, where the Tube was filmed, and he was driving across a spooky moor on his way home, and our weird instrumentally music song called Information that we did. He was playing that and he loved it. He absolutely loved it. It was just fitting. And he rang us up a few days later and said, "You're on the program. I want you on." And what they did was they did better than that. They took us to a beautiful old deserted, old derelict priory called Alnwick Priory up in Northumberland near Newcastle, Hadrian's Wall kind of area. And we recorded this amazing video. It was a baking hot sunny day, and we did this video for The Bushes Scream. And it's like 8 or 9 minutes long. It wasn't just a 3-minute song. There's like a video either end of it as well. It's purposely in black and white. It was a boiling hot day, but the video's in black and white. And you can see a very youthful, like I say, 17-year-old drummer performing this song. And it was on the Tube. So then again, we had the school thing where, like, I'm embarrassed to say it, but I remember doing little posters. I think I printed up some A4 posters and put them on the notice boards all around the school. The Very Things. It was TVT on TV. Even that rang really well. The Very Things, TVT. TVT on TV, Friday the 28th of October, live on Channel 4 on the Tube. And the worst thing with that is it got cancelled. There was a strike. So I put the posters up, and it was going to be on the Tube on that Friday. I had to take them down on the Monday, and everyone was saying it wasn't on because there was some TV dispute or something. And it took another couple of weeks for it to finally come on. And then eventually I put the posters back up again with the new date, and there it was, and it was shown. And again, it was a slightly warmer reaction this time, because obviously it was TV, rather than radio. And you know, in terms of, you know, musical career, I guess being on that program was a big thing. And then it actually, about some time later, about another 8-9 months later, they invited us back and we actually performed live. We did one track called Let's Go Out, which again you can find on YouTube. And again, you'll see me on the drums live in the studio at Tyne's TV in Newcastle, you know. And of course, it was Jules Holland, Paulie Yates as well, rest in peace. You know, she was the presenter, the co-presenter at the time. So you know, that's probably the peak where we really felt we were getting somewhere. It's certainly in indie circles, you know. And we were, as I say, we were mixing with people like Bjork and the Sugar Cubes, and I think we Sisters of Mercy and all these indie bands. We were kind of like floating around, or we were performing the like festivals in Austria, and they'd been on the night before type thing, and we were on the night after, and so on and so forth. But
this is not the conversation I expected to have.
I know. No one knows this
beautiful
stuff. It's all fact checkable, guys. You can check all these facts. It's you know, if you look up One Little Indian Records, you'll see the very things, and you'll see the Sugar Cubes, Bjork's band. You know, well, Bjork's very loyal actually, because she stayed with the Derek Burkett, who's the head of One Little Indian. She stayed with him. You know, but I think one of my regrets, though, you know, you mentioned when we were off air about opportunities and so on. Well, on the same label as the Sugar Cubes and my band were the Shaman, and I remember I was in the kitchen because I used to stay with Derek, who ran the label. I used to stay with him in Sydenham in South London, and I remember he once played me this cassette, and this will appeal to you because you know this very well. He played me a cassette one night. I remember having toast. I remember having I always remember the food. I remember having thickly cut toast spread with thick butter. And I was eating it in his basement kitchen, a beautiful house in London, like I say, in Sydenham, with the sort of basement kitchens, you know. And I was sitting there, it was like 3:00 in the morning. And he said, Robin, he said, this band are looking for a drummer. And I hadn't really heard of them. He said, this band are looking for a drummer. He said, what do you think of this? And he played me this song. And it was a crude version of I Can Move Any Mountain. And I looked at him and I thought, that's fucking shite. I said, no, you're all right. Because the very things were still going, but kind of like felt like it was going to kind of peter out. And I don't know what I was doing down there, but
this has got to be 87, 88.
Yeah, it was exactly that. Yeah, towards the end of the very things, which is sort of 83 to 80, sort of 7 or 80, 88, 87 probably. And and it was the Shaman and Move Any Mountain. And I literally, you're laughing because it's true. I literally turned it down. I said, nah, rubbish. I'm not going to play that. It sounds weak and naff, you know. My ears were full of all the indie stuff, I guess. And it was just like, it was a bit too weepy and, you know, and I just thought, nah, rubbish that. 2 years later, they're number one, aren't they? With Easer Good, Ebenezer Good. And I'm sitting at home watching Top of the Pops thinking, that's the band that asked me to join them. You know, or at least the record boss asked me to join them. So, you know, so that was a near miss. And then the other near miss, which is horrific, and again, Soul People. Nice to have you on board, Soul People. We'll get to you in a bit. Soul People again will be utterly horrified at this, I think, Andy, because they won't. The parallel in my life is bizarre from this stuff that I'm talking about to the soul stuff. People are thinking, oh, he's not a soul boy. No, I was always a soul boy, but what I was physically doing was the indie stuff. But I auditioned. And again, you'll know the name, but you won't know much about them, I'm sure, without sounding patronising. It's not your thing. But I auditioned at the same time as the very things were kind of dissolving. And I'd done a bit of stuff with Bjork and the Sugar Cubes. I actually went on tour with Bjork. I ended up doing their merchandising, believe it or not. There's a photo of me hanging up one of their posters for the merchandise stand in the Royal Court Theatre in Liverpool or somewhere, hanging up a Sugar Cubes poster. Anyway, so the reason I'm telling you that is because I kind of used that to blag my way into an audition. And because I basically told the manager of this band that I was with Bjork and the Sugar Cubes. They were really cool at the time. They were really popular, you know. And I said I was with the Very Things. I was the drummer of the Very Things, and I'd done some stuff with Bjork and whatever, like you do, you know. This manager got in touch with me and said, okay, we've got an audition. There's you and one other guy. And I auditioned at a rehearsal studio in London, And I remember playing, and I'd done that thing. I'd gone back to my jam days at home where I played along to the jam, because when I was at home, and I bought the album, or I got the album of this particular band. I'm going to tell you in a minute. And I played it so thoroughly, with the headphones on again. I just learned it literally note by note, that I remember playing it with the band in London, and I played one song with them to start with. I was there for about an hour and a half. I played one song, and they started laughing. When it finished, they burst out laughing. And I said, "Oh, is everything okay? What's the problem?" And they said, they were laughing, and they just said, "You just sound like the record." I'm like, "Oh no, yeah. Well, I've learned it. I thought that's what you wanted." And they're like, "It's incredible. You just sound like the record. Everything's spot on." I'm like, "Yeah," because I've rehearsed it thoroughly for like about 4 weeks, just absolutely pounding away, just trying to get everything perfect, so that I could sound like and be their drummer. Maybe it wasn't what they wanted, but anyway, that band, and again, you'll know the name from indie circles, they were absolutely huge in the late 80s. The Jesus and Mary Chain.
Mm-hmm.
From Scotland.
I couldn't tell you how they sounded at all, but I know the name.
They had top 40 albums. They had top 10 hits, April Skies, all sorts of things. They're very influenced by like the Velvet Underground and some of those 60s bands. But again, I mean, there's a connection to your world, because their drummer, the reason they needed a drummer is because their drummer was Bobby Gillespie,
okay,
who formed Primal Scream. He was the Jesus and Mary Chain drummer. I mean, people probably don't, non-indie people won't know that, but people know Loaded, don't they? Of course, so, they crossed over, didn't they? Primal Scream became really big, but Bobby Gillespie, the singer of Primal Scream, was the drummer in the Jesus and Mary Chain, and he left. And anyway, so that's why they needed a drummer for touring and live work or whatever. And anyway, so there was me and this other guy, and the other guy got it. They rang the other guy and rang me and said, "You were brilliant. You're really, really good, but we feel the other guy looks more in keeping with them."
Okay, so it wasn't even that he was actually had a little bit more.
No,
flair,
the manager made it really, really clear. He says, ability-wise, he says, "You're spot on." He said, we can't fault it. And I believe that because of the way they reacted. But yeah, I literally was one person away. If school is still listening, they'd be thinking, "What? The Jesus and Mary? You're kidding me?" No, I was one person away from being the drummer of the Jesus and Mary Chain. And again, a quick look on Google. If you look at a photo of them, it's all black leathers, black clothes, spiky hair, very dour, very indie. And they were famous for, at the time, they were really famous, Andy, for their gigs lasted about 4 songs because the audience would go crazy. They'd kick over their own instruments and they'd walk off stage like in a huff after like 4 songs. And that repeatedly happens. They were always in the Sun newspaper for things like that, Riot at Jesus and Mary Chain gig and all this sort of stuff,
Okay.
But I don't look anything like, and again, the soul people, your Belfry people, they wouldn't look at me and think that's like the Jesus and Mary Chain drummer, but I was that close. I was literally one person away. There's only 2 of us audition.
Right.
And that's that. So that was a near miss. So if you add those, the point about being a near miss is obviously they had a lot of success, sold a lot of records, So them and the Shaman were 2 that I missed out on, one through my choice and one through not my choice. But yeah, so that was really the drumming career at that stage, anyway, into the sort of late 80s. So,
okay. Well, you mentioned about choices there. It's 45 minutes into this conversation. Let me welcome anyone along. Myself and Robin Holland, deep in conversation about soul music and the great old Birmingham.
We haven't mentioned soul music.
But it's really, really great to hear that, and probably the first time you've ever shared it in such detail, right?
It is. Yeah, I mean, obviously I got to know you and Schooley and Justin and VC and everybody, in the Choice FM days, but I don't think many of you were really aware of that background because
not at all.
I think I'd been DJing for so many years at that stage as well that I kind of mentally moved on from that. But I do feel, if I'm really honest, I certainly gave up the drumming way too early. But I think it's because I started so early. I think doing what I did at 16, I mean, again, like I say, people now just think, it's nothing, with TikTok and YouTube and whatever. But at 16 years old, as I say, still doing double maths at school and recording a John Peel session, it was a big thing, really big thing, and it felt big, even if I wasn't making money or being featured on TV a lot or whatever. It felt a big thing. So, you know, I think it just kind of felt like by 21, I'd been kind of doing it by sort of like 4 or 5 years, and it was like, oh, that's it now. So, but like I look back now and I think there's people joining bands at like 50 and 45 and 30 and 35. I could have maintained. I think I probably, if I'd stuck at it, because I got other offers as well. Actually, again, it's another indie band. I won't go into it mad, but there's a band called Dead Can Dance, who again were very, very big in the indie world. I didn't audition for them. I got asked to join them, and I did one rehearsal with them, and I didn't like it at all. That was really deep and gothic-y. But again, they sell a lot of records. They were on the 4AD label, and they sold a lot of records, but very European, very sort of sultry and very mysterious music. But it wasn't really my thing. So, I didn't enjoy that.
Would you say all of these brushes with success, or the actual taste of relative success, shaped you as your character? Would you say it stood you in good stead for what was to come down the years, or would you say that it wasn't necessarily a blessing?
Yeah, I think it probably did. You always kind of feel like you've always been like you are, don't you? You always feel like this is me, this is what I'm like. But do you mean the humour side of things? Maybe, I don't know.
Well, no, we'll get onto that. We'll get onto that.
I don't know. I just always, maybe to a certain degree. Yeah, I think that's probably a yes. I think the early musical involvement certainly helped me, feel confident in myself, in what I was able to do. But the lack of money, because obviously I didn't make very much money out of the band days, because we didn't sell hit records, obviously. So that kind of disillusioned me a little bit as well. And I do feel that by 21, I felt like I wanted to earn some proper money, at least have some sort of wage, But I'd actually started DJing at 16. So if we move off the music and go back to that, 16, I remember we were doing the band things, but obviously they're not 24/7, 7 days a week. So we'd rehearse on like a Monday night, and then we might play live. We might have a gig in Nottingham or something on the weekend after, or something like that, or whatever. But obviously there's time to yourself. So I started DJing at 16. I remember at 16 I managed to codge together a little mobile rig and started the old traditional way. Literally got some belt drive BSR. They were BSR belt drive decks. And I was buying records all along. Like I say, from 8 years old, I was buying records, and definitely buying soul records. So I was already building up that collection, 7 inches, the good old sevens. And basically codged this disco together, started doing back garden parties, little house parties, then got the little booking, in a village hall or a social club, and so on and so forth. So actually, when we were doing the very things and going through the musical stuff, I was actually DJing all along in those days. I had gigs, and then weddings, of course, and everything, weddings. So, I certainly always had the personality on the mic to take the mickey out of people and give people a hard time and whatever, So that is the DJs that come along now don't know half of that stuff, do they? Weddings and things like that. The club DJ, unless you've come from that background, it's kind of like an all-rounder background, really. You get tested more doing a mobile disco at a wedding than you do doing a club gig. I can assure you of that.
Without a shadow of a doubt, it's not given the credit it deserves on the underground circuit, purely because of the skills that are needed. And you talk about clearing a dance floor. Wow. They can be brutal.
Yeah,
brutal at weddings and christenings and everything.
Yeah, indeed.
Okay, well, Schooley was, of course, he's going to be glued to the screen. He says his cousin used to listen to the Jesus and Mary
really?
a lot. Yeah. Bobby Adams is also still locked on. He says we need a part 2. Well, we still got some way to go yet. And VC is saying, I've learnt something new about you.
Bless. Bradford's finest. Hello, Victor. You all right, mate?
So so the DJing then that will take us along, and where do you feel is a part that you really start to get out of the sticks, as it were?
Well, yeah, that came with the sort of first resident nights. So you sort of progress from the mobile discos in pubs and weddings and things like that, and then I think probably it was somewhere around about early 20s. I think I got, a Tuesday night somewhere at a bar in Birmingham. And just kind of like progressed from there. But it's interesting because the first sort of residency that really kicked in was probably Rosie O'Brien's in Solihull.
Okay.
Which you spoke about recently with good old Justin, our friend Justin Wilkes. Very interesting and informative conversation with him, by the way. I really enjoyed listening to that. Boy, that guy's done some stuff, hasn't he? Incredible. Incredible. Amazing. So, yeah, and Justin, of course, referred to that. And, of course, Pete Gooding and Phil Doherty, of course, you've had on as well, I believe. And, of course, they were very much part of that Rosie O'Brien thing. They started that night on a Tuesday night, the commission night they were doing there and so on and so forth. So, yeah, Rosie's in Solihull was a big starting point. And it's funny, actually, because at the same time I got offered that, literally at the same time, because I had to turn it down, I was offered Tramps in Worcester, which, of course, is my old patch, like Worcestershire and Warwickshire. There's a lovely old manager of that place called Derek who used to run Tramps in Worcester, and he offered me, well, I actually did audition. I went over there and auditioned for him, but I took...
So how do these offers come about? People hear about you through the grapevine. You're making a lot of noise for yourself.
Well, just through the grapevine. I think just from doing parties and stuff like that. I think I had some business cards made and just did it the usual way, really, proper from the ground up, Andy. Really, to be honest with you, no frills, no flyers, no advertising, no Facebook, nothing like that at all. Just word of mouth and so on and so forth, and me phoning as well. I think I phoned Tramps in Worcester and said, you need a DJ? And he said, oh, funnily enough, we're auditioning some next week. So I put myself in for that and whatever. And he, it's a shame because I went to Rosie O'Brien's and the guy offered me Danny Coveney, lovely good manager that used to run the place. He offered me like 2 or 3 nights a week rather than the one at Worcester. So that's why I did the Solihull gig. But that was really the sort of probably one of the first feet into the clubland as such. And of course, these were commercial nights. So I was playing in the bar downstairs. I don't know if you even remember Roses or went. I mean, maybe you did because it's not far from where you used to live. The bar downstairs was a commercial run of the mill thing. So like I mentioned earlier, you would be playing Robin S and CC Peniston and all those things, But then, as I said to you, I always wanted to put my soul stamp on it. So I would always do commercial nights, but do them in a soulful way, because that was my thing. I couldn't play the indie stuff. The indie stuff had long gone by. I'd left that alone by then. But I don't know, at the time, stuff like your Kenny Thomases and the Pasadenas and that sort of stuff. I'd push that stuff on the unsuspecting crowd. They'd have to put up with that stuff. But obviously, certain people liked it, and you get a reputation. I felt I built a reputation for being the soulful side of things. I certainly was never house. No offense, house guys. I certainly was never that side of things. And dance music as well didn't appeal to me. I was always wanted to do soul within my nights. And obviously the idea of doing an actual soul night, which I probably hadn't really done at that stage and out, at those early years, I hadn't really done a full on soul night as such. But I guess, that all leads up to the big B, doesn't it? Probably the big Bel Air.
But before we get to there, let me ask you about other DJs, your peers, so to speak. Were you heading into town? Had you been going to the Powerhouse all day? As I'm sure there were other big events that I can't drag from my memory. Were there people who you can specifically say, yes, they were the kind of people I wanted to go and check out? That was the reputation and the respect that I wanted to attain.
Yeah. Well, probably more so on radio than live, to be honest with you. People you know very well. Jeff Young was a massive influence when I was growing up, when I was younger, at home. Even when I was drumming, I'd listen to Jeff Young, the Big Beat, Friday nights, Radio 1. And there was a guy called, I don't know if you remember, there was a guy called Mark Tonderai. I don't know if he's still around. He sort of came along a little bit later as well. Even, in those days, even, this might sound crazy, but Andy Peebles used to play. You got to remember I'm older than you here, mate. Andy Peebles used to play on a Friday night as well, before Jeff Young, I think. So I remember being in the bath at home, and I remember the Andy Peebles show, and he used to play commercial, but I could tell he was a soul fan. And he used to squeeze in like proper soul tunes amongst his show, So I remember even that's an influence from from those days. But Jeff Young was a massive influence, you know, with what was going on at those times. And,
huge.
you know, yeah.
Well, I had a great conversation with Jeff on here, and he was talking about his love for the, you know, the hip hop and pushing that sound and you know, before he moved in and championed the house. Okay, so you mentioned it, as I say, 55 minutes in, we get to talk about the main topic of the evening, but this is great. We're under no time constraints.
Sorry.
No, there's no need to apologise whatsoever.
You know what it is? I don't talk about the very thing stuff very much, but the Bel Air, every single week someone mentions it to me. So, and it's not a bad thing, obviously. It's a nice legacy to have. But, you know, my missus will tell you, you know, every week without fail, and that's not an exaggeration. Someone mentions the Belfry to me. We can be out in Birmingham or something, and someone go, "All right, Robin, I missed the Bel Air days." You know, I'm like, yeah, you know, without a shadow of a doubt, I'd barely go a few days without someone mentioning the Belfry to me. It's incredible. Okay, really.
So why? So you know, this will be part of your legacy, but clearly there's so much more to you than that. When I started and I said about, you know, jokingly giving you the title of the King of Bel Air, and you kind of grimaced a little bit. Let's remember to touch on why that made you grimace, but I guess we should find out about the chain of events that got you in there.
Yeah, well, I think I used to go there socially. That's the funny thing. I used to go there socially on because I was DJing, you know, parties and weddings and things like that or whatever. I think I started to go there on like a Tuesday night, like a, you know, ladies' night or whatever, like a midweek night. I was quite a club. I used to like going clubbing myself, you know. Commercial venues that played soul music, and I used to socially go. And I think I literally did the old, you know, chat to the manager. Oh, I'm a DJ, you know, type thing. That all us DJs get fed up with these days. You know, the old, oh, I'm a DJ, mate. Oh, why are you not working then? You know, that old one. I think I just pestered. I pestered the manager and I pestered the DJ that was there at the time. I think I managed to get. That was the night I actually started. Again, people don't know this, Andy, but I actually started at the Belfry on a Tuesday night. I got a residency on a Tuesday night. That was my way in the door. So I was doing like a Tuesday at the Belfry, and I was doing like a Thursday, Friday at Roses in Solihull. Yeah, that was my foot in the door, was the Tuesday night. But the Monday was the night I really liked, of course, because it was the soul night as such. It was the sort of, you know, it was set up to be the soul night. And the DJ at the time...
Why was that? Was there a reason?
Oh, I don't know. I mean, another late DJ used to do that night called Nicky Steele. Nicky Steele was a well-known DJ in the Midlands. He was on BRMB in Birmingham and so forth, but he's not with us anymore, sadly. Rest in peace. But he used to do the Monday night, but the venue itself was something else. It was called Clangers, I think. I think it was called Clangers. This is before my time. I'm not that old. But he started a Monday night, and again, you and Schoolie and everyone will appreciate this. It was just impossibly rare to have a Monday night. You know, clubs didn't exist on a Monday night. It wasn't warranted. There wasn't enough trade to do a Monday night, whether it be soul or anything. So, you know, your weekend clubbers are the weekend clubbers, aren't they? They go out on a Saturday mainly, then a Friday, then a Thursday a little bit, and it progressively went backwards through the week, didn't it? You know this. It was just, you know, there was never a Monday night in existence anywhere really.
So do you think it was just going through the motions just to satisfy the need for play this kind of music when it's not really going to be that popular, and we don't need to worry about playing that on our busy Friday and Saturday nights?
Exactly
scenario.
That. Mm-hmm. Yeah, a niche genre. Yeah, they wouldn't touch it on a Thursday, Friday, or Saturday. And the Bel Air was different anyway. Don't forget, because you've got the hotel. It's part of the hotel, so they kind of catered for the residents as well. So, like, the residents would come down. People are staying there. They get pissed in the hotel. Come down to the nightclub. We're away from work. We're away from home. Get pissed, and they won't come on Eileen. You know. So.
Yeah, I mean, stating very obvious, there will be one or two people who get to see this. Actually, I'm sure maybe the whole of the country knows that the Belfry is obviously an infamous golf course. And the Bel Air was the nightclub. of the Belfry Hotel.
In the grounds of the hotel, that's right. Yeah.
Just in case anybody didn't know that.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Absolutely fine. Yeah. More info, the better. So, so it was set up just as sort of the Monday night was kind of in existence, but it didn't have a style to it particularly. And then after Nicky Steele there was a DJ there called Mark Bristow. Now, Mark Bristow played a key role because I was going socially and got to know him a little bit and enjoyed the Monday nights that he did. But musically, it was like it was a soul thing, but it was a kind of dip the toe into the water soul night. It wasn't really a deep soul thing. And music at the time was Return of the Mac, Mark Morrison, who, funnily enough, used to actually visit the Bel Air on a Monday. He used to come down quite often because he was from Leicester, as you know, schooly land. But that was kind of where we were. But that was what was in the charts. So it was kind of like that. And it was, and again, probably Kenny Thomas and stuff like that. That was kind of what it was set up when I kind of got involved. So what happened with the Monday night is that Mark Bristow asked me to cover him. And I was already working there. That's what people don't know, because they Tuesday nights I would do, and you're lucky to get 40 people there, in a 1,250 capacity nightclub. And so I'd cover Mark, and I used to get so excited. I was buzzing, absolutely buzzing. I used to go around all the record stores and buy some cool soul records and, stick them in my little Adder case, the old cardboard Adder DJ case, and drive up there in my Ford Orion and, fill in for this guy. And obviously I was buzzing, to be there on a Monday with what I could see was a soul crowd, and there was the opportunity to sort of impress on them more soulful soul music, if that makes sense, and that's kind of what I did. I remember just filling in. I probably filled in for him, probably not that many times, probably only 4 or 5 times over the space of a couple of years. I filled in, and I then inherited the Monday night because I was already working there. I was a Belfry DJ, but not on a Monday. And Mark Bristow, the previous DJ to me, decided to resign from the Monday nights, or he just had enough or whatever, I don't know. And it was a natural thing for the manager at the time to ask me to take over the Monday nights, so I did.
Let's put a timestamp on this. And by the way, let me say good evening to Richard Roberts, who's commented and says hello to you. Timestamp here.
Well, it was about, I don't know, 90-something, 90... Yeah, no, early 90s, maybe 1990. It's difficult, I'd have to look it up. I know when it finished. I can tell you the exact date it finished, but I don't know when I don't know when I actually started at the Belfry. But I've always said to people that don't realise is that I was at the Belfry years before I did this at the Monday night, as a commercial DJ, and they don't realise that.
Okay.
I haven't told you I did Fridays actually for a long time as well. I went from the Tuesday to the Friday, but inherited the Monday.
Okay.
And the Friday was a blockbusting monster party Friday night, which again I did a big soul session on,
So all the way all the time on the microphone, all the way with the sense of humour. I've spoken about it quite a bit in recent weeks when talking about music, talking about the success of DJs. Over the years, you built up a very loyal fan base and a real strong community that come and supported you. Was that always apparent from the beginning as your success grew? That because being with you on many occasions, many times, shouting out someone by name on the dance floor, giving them a bit of ribbing, talking about something that had happened a while ago, touching, I always, may God rest his soul, thinking about Lester. You always give Lester something on the dance floor,
Oh, yeah, Lester Morrell.
Puts a big smile on my face thinking of Lester.
Bless him. Rest in peace, Lester. Yeah, he was one of my targets you sound like you were there every week. He was one of my targets at the Belfry on a Monday night because he was just such a ladies' man, bless him. And he would, I used to have a joke with him, and his boys used to want to beat me up apparently, but Lester used to say, "Nah, Robin's cool, man," because I used to do this joke, and I used to do it all the time. He'd come in, and I'd leave it about an hour, and I'd see him working the room, shall we call it, and I'd see him with a little notepad, and he'd be dishing little numbers out, and I remember I'd go on the mic towards the end of the night, and I'd say, "Ladies and gentlemen, if you're wondering what all the bits of paper are on the floor, they're Lester Morrell's phone numbers where he tried to give them to all the girls," And of course the crowd would all go, "Whoa!" Because everyone knew Lester. So that always got a good laugh. I know it's an old joke now, but it got a laugh, and the place would blow up. The dance floor, everyone would go, whoa, and people would laugh, and Lester would come over and like shake it. He'd do that walk, that spider walk. He'd come up and shake my hand, and then I found out later on that he said to me himself, he said, my boys, they used to want to box you up. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, yeah. They used to say to me in seriousness, they used to say, yo, listen to him, man. He's taking the mickey out of you, man. And Lester go, nah, man, Robin's cool. Bless him. So he could take a joke. As well as dish one out. So, yeah.
Beautiful to talk about him tonight. Yeah.
Yeah. I've to answer your question or your theory, Andy. Yeah, I've always been very big on interaction. I'm not a DJ that's afraid to use the microphone. It's one of my strengths, I think. I don't pretend to be technically brilliant. I've never been technically brilliant. I mean, I learned on belt drive decks where I used to mix and 7-inch singles and everything else. But there's fantastic DJs out there that are technically amazing. And I don't even try to emulate them. It's not my thing. I'll do running mixes all night long. I can mix. I can do running mixes. It's whether I can be bothered most of the time. To be honest with you, I'm terribly in the zone with the laziness. I'm always looking for an opportunity on the mic, as you know. I'm always looking around the room, to host. I enjoy hosting, which, as you know, we'll get onto that shortly as well. That's where we kind of move along to. But I've always been big on that. I've always felt presentation. This does go right back to the mobile discos, because I know it's cheesy and it's commercial and it's naff, but it's actually very, very good groundwork for a DJ. It really is. Even if it's like can someone move the transit van from the back doors? That old one.
The buffet's open.
Yeah, the buffet. Oh, I've done that a million times. Yeah, the Benson buffet. We've got my boys have got a name for it. We call it the George Benson buffet. It's the Benson buffet because it's that that wheedly background music while you're getting your profiter rolls and your vol au vents.
What would you put down the success of the Monday nights? Was it an amalgamation of many different things? Because it became what's the word I'm looking for? What's the word I'm looking for when it became something so absolutely huge? It was just the place to go. Bearing in mind, I've got only a few years younger than you, and living at the time on Castle Vale, which was an estate not too far away. The Belfry, the Bel Air would be the place that you would go first of all to try and get in. Because it was maybe.
That was you, was it? That was you that couldn't get in, right?
Yeah, because of the estate I was from.
That leather tie you used to wear, that slimline leather tie. Yeah, I remember.
Possibly.
Yeah.
And then going on the pull as well, it's notorious. But for the older crowd, it was the place that you had to be. So I'm just talking over my original question. What is the success? What do you put the success down to?
Absolutely brilliant question. Yeah. Many, many factors. In terms of the soul music, I'll be honest with you, if anyone wants to give me credit, I don't take any credit for just playing records, but if anyone wants to give me and be very generous and give me a bit of credit for it, I think I have thought about this. I've had time to think about this, obviously. I think I recognised that there needed to be a genre for it to last. If you just played Wham and Roxy music on a Monday night, there'd be nobody there. You'd have 20 people from the hotel. So I was always into soul. I was always heavily into black music. And that is what I recognised needed to be there, I think, because there was a little, as I say, there was a little basis of it with the old Monday night with Mr. Bristow, the previous guy. And I just felt that I recognised that the look of all of this is, I think I recognised very early that it needed to be a soul night. If it was going to last, actually make it a soul night. Play the loose ends, play the Bookie Newbury the Third, play the whatever, play the Controllers, play all those things, at the time. And then into the 90s, you're talking, the commercial R&B that was in the charts, like the Donnell Jones and the, Horace Browns and all those things, all those tunes that became massive, John B and all that stuff. And they became like Belfry anthems, and I just recognised that it needed to go that way. It was no good just doing chart music. You couldn't just play chart music on a Monday because there'd be nobody there. Nobody would be interested because the trendy crowd, we'll call them, the trendies, they've had enough by Saturday night. By Sunday morning, they've had enough. They've done it on a Friday and a Saturday and sometimes on a Thursday. So to get the black crowd, to get the soul crowd and the black music loving crowd out, you needed to appeal to that nature. You needed a genre that suited. And it was my heart. It was what I wanted to do. It was what I'd always, I'd always bought those records and always wanted to play to that genre. I wanted to play that genre to a responsible and respectable crowd. And,
last week when I spoke to Colin Curtis, he said that Birmingham was one of the toughest places to play to because the crowd knew their music, and it's a word that I use a hell of a lot on this channel. Authenticity. You people bought into you. You didn't stick out like a sore thumb. Nobody ever looked up and said, "Who's the white guy playing all this soul music?"
No, people did say that. People did say that, and people still refer to that these days. Actually, but that's a story for part two. But,
only a few people. Only a few people.
Yeah, and they know who they are. We've all got our haters, haven't we, Andy? We've all got our haters, and there's plenty out there. Trust me. But I don't want to take on a negative vibe here. But at the time, though, you're absolutely right. Yeah, I felt a lot of respect. I felt a lot of love. And if you know me, you come and have a look at my record collection, just like yours, Schoolies, VC, all these lovely people. It's there. I'm not a faker. I'm not the white guy that's just come along and bought a Loose Ends album. I can tell you B-sides to Booker Newbury singles. I can tell you, the first track on a By All Means album, which Schoolie will appreciate. Actually, I've got to give big love to Schoolie because we always had a connection. Actually, me and Schoolie, even if we don't talk for ages, we always had a big connection with that nature of soul music, just slightly more underground. Schoolie would always appreciate stuff that he knew I understood, like bands like By All Means and The Affair, and some of these people. Again, people may not know these names, but they were artists that I invested in, and I know Schoolie did as well. So a big shout to Schoolie because I've got a lot of love for him because he was always by my side with that kind of stuff.
Beautiful. Well, Robbie J passes through and says good evening. And I'm just not going to get caught up in the conversation. Richie said to talk about the Engine House, but I don't want to take away from the chain of conversation that we're on at the moment. Thank you, Richie, for your comment, though. Okay, so things are going along. At some point, radio comes knocking.
Yeah, well, actually, I will just go back to the Engine House because it's worth it because we're at a suitable point here, and that's that. Okay. In terms of night clubbing, actually, I will just get this in. Where I hit the sort of resident nights at Solihull and those sort of places. The Engine House in Tardybig was an amazing club. I don't know if you know. I'm sure you do know of it. Yeah, it's a beautiful little place.
Fearing for my life. Every Sunday afternoon after Marco Polo's on the drive through the country lanes. I know it very well.
You should try it in the ice. And the snow. Yeah, the Engine House. I did intend on mentioning that actually because it's one of all Richie's absolutely fantastic, lovely guy, as you know. And there was him and another guy called Simon Wright, who were the two resident DJs, and we all became really good friends. And they were very influential in what I was not just listening to, but playing at the time as well, because they knew I was doing the mobile discos and things. Wasn't really doing the club work as such at like 20, 21 years old. I actually had my 21st birthday at the Engine House in the lovely restaurant downstairs. But Engine House was between Redditch and Bromsgrove, if people don't know. It's Tardybig, area called Tardybig, and it's right on the canal. It's an old canal pumping house. And it was just an amazing place to go. And Richie was a brilliant DJ and still is, and was playing there at the time. And he was doing stuff like I Believe in Miracles, Jackson Sisters, the Pasadenas was really big at the time. Probably Ralph Tresvant, Sensitivity. Some of those songs just really stuck with me, and they were right up my street. And I've got a lot of love for that time. And Richie deserves a big shout out. And Simon Wright, who became a Sunday Mirror journalist actually, and got into trouble a few years later. But we won't go into that. That's another story. But Engine House played a very big part in my clubbing years. Yeah, which we haven't talked about really. So. Because obviously I was going out when I hadn't got a gig, when I hadn't got a wedding or a buffet thing to do, I was going out. And Richard will tell you, I remember actually turning up at the Engine House in my disco gear in the back of the car. I had an old Citroen 2CV at one point, and I remember fully loaded with old flashing lights and vinyl, of course, and everything else. And I remember going clubbing after I'd done a gig, because the parties, those mobiles finished about midnight. So I'd drive down the lanes with all the disco gear in the back of the car, and I'd go and club it in the Engine House to the sounds of Richie and Simon. So yeah, that's another part.
Richie, drop me a message because at some point I am going through all the heads, and we can have a conversation. Okay, so thank you for putting that piece of the jigsaw in. Radio, because again, just got to say, we're not going to cover everything, but I think radio is an important part.
Okay. Can we finish the Belfry before that? Just the final question. I've still got half of that.
I think it's at the same time, isn't it?
It is at the same time, yeah. But there's just that one question about the Belfry I wanted to round off about, because I've only discussed the fact that I took it more in a soulful direction. I think other factors made it amazing. Number one, it's not on a bus route, which might sound crazy, but you can't actually get there, as you know, unless you've got transport. You know, you can't cycle there. It's the middle of nowhere, really. You can't come off the motorway on a bicycle. You can't get a bus there. You know, you had to have a car or a taxi. And I think that in itself kept it quite exclusive. The fact that even things like, and people laugh, but things like the car park, it had a very expansive, big open car park, both sides of the club. It was very comfortable to park there. It was a destination venue, you know, especially for the soul elite on a Monday. They knew they were going there. You know, they spruced up and everything.
That was the word I was looking for. Mainstay. Carry on.
Yeah. Absolutely. There you go. And all these factors all came together, Andy, and just made it work. And you know, we and then the bank holidays. That's another story, as you know. The bank holidays were just insane. I mean, the venue held 1,250 people officially, but I mean, the bank holidays we had 1,400 in and 1,380 and God knows what. It was just ridiculous, you know. The regular Mondays, I'm the first to admit that, you know, the regular Mondays in their peak, they were probably at sort of 500-600 or something like that. But that's their absolute peak. But you know, I mean, it tailed off like everything does. You know, in the end, it was a couple of hundred people if you were lucky, type thing. You know, by the end of it, it had its day, really. You know, and people had grown older and had kids and moved on and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think some of those things make up the recipe of why it worked so well at the time. You know, but yeah, radio. Well, yeah, let's go.
Okay, so I met you at Choice FM. My position at Choice FM when I first got my foot in the door, after being asked to do a guest mix twice a week on the Traffic Jam. I as a DJ, clearly 30-minute house mix, I asked if there was ever any opportunities for more work on radio for them to consider me. And Colin Mason said, yeah, we can find something for you. And then I'm telling you what you already know, of course. And then I was given the position of TO, technical operator, through the evenings, playing your links over the top of the playlist. I would be playing the music, then I'd have to play your voice in between the tracks, so it sounded like it was yourself. And that was how I got into radio. But at what point did you get onto Choice FM?
So you made me big then.
Well, there you go.
Not that I am big, but you made me big. You made me big on Choice FM. Yeah, well, that's and I've done well not to do the Colin Mason impression as well. There, you know, I've had to hold back on that. You know,
I think Justin nailed it.
Sergeant Major one, yeah. School is good at that as well. No, I invited our Choice FM boss at the time, because I was with Choice before you, I think, wasn't I? I think I was, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was. Yeah, I can't remember. Mr. Franklin Hughes.
Yeah, that was before my time.
Yeah, Franklin Hughes. You got it going on. He was the boss, and he used to like the ladies, and I struck very lucky, actually, Andy, because I'd attempted to do radio. I'd attempted to get on radio, had no luck. Actually came very close as well. I've got another, apart from the Jesus and Mary chain and the shame, and I've got a story on that as well, a very quick one. I actually entered, and I had to look this up, actually. It was 1993. I was already working at the Belfry. I entered the BRMB Search for a Star contest. Don't know if you're ever aware of that. They did this, and this is when it was at Aston House, at Aston Cross. It wasn't at the Brindley Place one. It was at the original studios, which I know you know where those were. And basically, they did this thing in the Evening Mail. It was like they did it on live, obviously. I nearly said online. It wasn't online. It was live, and it was an Evening Mail. It was BRMB Search for a Star. Any wannabe DJs and presenters come at 5 p.m. on such and such this day, like a Tuesday tea time at like 5 p.m. I think it was, and it was like. And I went, and I was living in Redditch at the time, and I drove up there, parked the car somewhere, walked around the corner to be confronted by about 350 people. It wasn't like 20, and it wasn't like 1,000. It was about 350, but it was like 3 deep, and like all the way around the corner. and Jimmy Franks was there actually, and he was sort of hosting it and sort of comparing the crowd. Like he was sort of, I think he got a radio mic outside. He was sort of like trying to G people along. Anybody, any girls, any this, that, whatever. Anyway, and I actually came second in it.
Wow.
You went in the studio, you did a couple of you spoke about yourself, headphones on, spoke about yourself. I was able to say I'm the DJ from the Belfry, which of course was a good thing. They were like, oh, the Belfry, always had a good reputation, even for commercial night, And I did a little introduction over the mic and whatever, and they recorded me. And anyway, you had to go away, and then you had to wait. And I found out by the evening mail that I'd come second. It said Robin Holland, and I think I was 27 or something at the time. It's quite old for radio. And it said Robin Holland 27, Robin Holland Redditch 27. And the winner of that one was Margarita Taylor, who I don't know if you're aware of, but she's had a very successful career in radio and TV. And I actually came second to her. So again, I was the nearly man there, I'm afraid. But yeah, Franklin Hughes, Choice FM, he was the boss. And I basically, I'd listened to radio forever, obviously, and in particular Buzz FM. So I was aware of Buzz, and I used to listen to guys on Buzz FM. I used to love that. And when Choice came about, obviously it's sort of like almost like a direct replacement for Buzz FM. I rang up the station and I got Franklin Hughes on the phone and said, "Look, I'm a DJ. I'm working at the Belfry. I've got this lovely night that I'm doing. It's a Monday night. It's a proper soul night. Why don't you come along?" And he did. And he bought some young nubile girl that he'd given YTS job to at the station. And I don't know what happened, but he certainly had a good night because I rang him the next day. Luckily, it was a really busy night as well. It was a really good Monday, and it was rocking, and the dance floor was going. I was on the mic and all that stuff. And I rang him the next day. I literally rang him up the next day and said, "Franklin, what did you think?" 'Cause I didn't see him at the end of the night. He obviously dashed off. And I said, "What did you think?" He goes, "Robbie, come and see me. Come and see me at the station." So I was buzzing. My heart was going. I was thinking, great, this is fantastic. Is it this easy? And I drove from Redditch to Choice FM, 95 Broad Street, as we know, and parked around the back and went in and went up to his office, and he says, "Why don't you do some overnights?" I'm like, okay, but they've got to be after I finish my gigs, because again, I didn't want to lose my gigs, which we've touched on earlier. And so I think that's where you come in with the TO in the tape hopping overnight and so on and so forth. I don't actually remember you doing that, but probably because
I used to. You used to do all the pre-records. I used to do it for yourself and for Lee Quinney.
Lee Quinney, yeah. The old Lee Quinney joke.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah. Another one from your patch.
So that was 95, 96 was when I was there. So you would have been there from about. So you hadn't actually already been doing daytime slots by then.
I'd done nothing,
wow.
mate. No. I started in 95.
I wasn't that far behind you then.
Yeah, I did 95. Well, I can't say for definite I didn't do any daytime slots, because I did do daytime slots. I remember covering for Mark Wright, our mutual friend, Mr. Wright, and because he was the drive time guy, wasn't he, at the time? And so I sort of fairly quickly progressed, I think. I was doing the nighttime show. I think it was sort of after Big John, wasn't it? I think it was like 2 till 6. 2 till 6. It was the 4 hours, before the breakfast show, before Brody Swain, And so I'd do that 4 hour thing. But obviously on a weekend night, I wouldn't want to do it, because I was doing probably Rosie O'Brien's or something at the time, and I wouldn't be able to, finish that club gig and get to the station or whatever. So I know there were times when there was a tape op used overnight, but I didn't remember it was you.
It was
so I'm flattered. I'm honoured, mate. Thank you.
I was really happy to be able to do it, and to get to learn the desk and whatever. And then as time progressed, just this is your story, not mine, but a series of incidents meant that I was doing a Friday night show. I was doing the Saturday afternoon Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, and then I was also doing the Sunday show, which I used to take over from yourself. So
that's right.
2 till 4, and I used to do 4 till 6, and then I think Simon used to. No, it was Sylvester was on after me. So when was Simon then? Because I'm sure there was time.
Simon was on after me.
Oh, so it was you, then Simon, then me.
Simon was on with The Source, which was his new music show, which was great. It worked so well because
that had gone completely out of my head. Now you say that's obvious.
Yeah, I was the old school guy, wasn't I, on the Sunday afternoon? So I progressed from the night time, did some cover work in the daytime, so I found myself doing drive time. I remember thinking I'd barely been at the station, not even a month probably, and I think I did my first daytime drive time thing, so that was a bit buzzy as well. And then obviously I spoke to Franklin, and he gave me my own show, and he talked to me about what I wanted to do. I was always the old school soul guy. That's what I knew about. That's what I loved. It was all on vinyl, of course, as you know, again. And he gave me the slot I wanted, which was sort of 2 till, I think it started at 2 till 4 or something. And then it went till, at one point, it was 4 hours. It was like 1 till 5 or something at one point. I don't know. It varied in lengths and times, but it was always called the Classic Jam. I gave it its name. It seemed to suit. And I know it was very, very popular. I'm aware of that. And it's not just something you feel. You do feel it, but also other things backed it up. There was a radar, again, it's radio speak for people who don't know, but it's a company that formulate radio listening figures. It's called Radar, and I know the Radar figures on that particular show. At one point, I'm sure I was told by Colin Mason. He pulled open all the reel of the figures. He said to me, he said, your show is very good. He goes, it's beating the Independents, which was BRMB at the time. So basically, I mean, breakfast show, obviously no chance, or any other time, drive time. But for my actual 2-hour slot on a Sunday afternoon, we were actually more listened to than BRMB, which was incredible because, as you know, there was no money in Choice FM or anything like that. So
you definitely dine out on all of those statistics. I had a few of those successes myself. It's not important, so don't worry about it. Have you got any extra light that you can flick on there or not?
Probably. It's just, how's that?
There you go. That's perfect. That's much better. Since we've lost the sun. No, that's perfect now. Okay. So we're going into sort of like 95 into 98. All this time, the Belfry's still going strong, and at some point, then you start to dip your toe into a more exotic kind of club, right? Because I do remember that at this point.
Yes, the lap dancing clubs, which again, people to this day, I mean, I've been more open about it recently, but people aren't even aware that I do it. And I remember in the early days, I'd have Monday night Belfry people turn up, I won't say names, obviously, turn up at these clubs for a bit of fun, and they'd be shocked, and they'd see me sat in the corner with my little spearmint rhino tie on, and they'd be like, "What are you doing here?" And I'm like, "Well, I'm earning a living. What are you doing here?"
Here's like, candy.
Yeah. So the lap dancing stuff, which has become a major part of my life, actually, to be honest with you. Again, I think exactly where it's.
You've got the tits for it.
Yeah, man. You noticed that? Yeah. I'm turning the bloody light off.
Yeah, go on, carry on.
No, that's better. There you go.
No. Go on. Yeah, sorry.
So I basically I got into that. I sort of fell into it really, Andy, because the venue I was working at was what is now and still is Spearmint Rhino on the Hagley Road in Birmingham. It's a lovely old Victorian building, whatever it is. I know you know it because you're a regular. Basically, that was called Club 64 before it was Spearmint Rhino. And I happened to be working there as a DJ on a Thursday night. I remember it was Thursdays I was doing. And it was a strange place because it was a nightclub, but it actually had poles, and it had 3 poles. It didn't have a stage, but it had 3 poles on the dance floor. So I was DJing, and there was a flat floor, and there was 3 poles. So like girls would come and swing around the pole and run up and be silly and whatever. And it wasn't an out and out lap dancing club. It was a nightclub as such. But it was like a members club. It was like a small time club. And Spearmint Rhino, who are like the Manchester City of the lap dancing world, American owned company, they came over and basically bought that building. They bought that venue. And sort of inherited me because I was already there on a Thursday. But they did some auditions, and it was funny, because I was sort of put in charge of doing the auditions, and we had DJs I wouldn't even be able to begin to describe how random it was. There was a guy turned up with his boxes of vinyl. And again, I don't want to sound snobby here, but because like the system was running a CD player, the old double Denon, remember the old double Denon,
Yeah.
Because lap dancing, you have to time it. And people think, what do you mean? No, you have to time the dances because people are paying £20, say, or was it tenner at the time, for a 3-minute dance. The songs have to be 3 minutes. So it's the weirdest form of DJing ever. You have to trim the songs to 3 minutes. So like this guy turned up, most people got it and they turned up with some CDs and headphones and whatever. And this guy turned up with his big heavy boxes of vinyl. And I said, what are you going to do with them? He goes, well, I'm going to play. I'm like, what on? There's no decks. It's CD player. It's lap dancing. He's like, oh, no. Oh. And I remember his name. It was DJ Junkie. So, he was out the door soon enough. But like, I you know me, I took the mick a bit. I was like, what are you going to do? You're going to, he was like, well, because he was really argumentative. He was at the front door. The doorman were like sort of ushering him away. And I was saying, what are you going to do? You're going to watch the vinyl go around like 1, 2, 3. You're going to count 3 minutes. How are you going to, you know what I mean? How are you going to monitor the time? And he's like, oh, well, you know, I thought I could just play and DJ. It's an audition. I said, yeah, but it's lap dancing. So it's unfortunately it's CDs and it has to be timed. It's 3 minutes a song, you know, because that's how long the dances are. So, you know, anyway, so that started that off. So I started doing there regularly because after a week or so, they offered me like the whole week. So, and I ended up doing, I remember distinctly, I was doing Tuesday to Saturday again, 5 nights at Spearmint Rhino on the Hagley Road. But it was a real steep learning curve as being what by then was a regular club DJ because they had a uniform. Their DJs had to wear a uniform, which was horrendous. You had to wear it's like a school uniform. You had to wear a black blazer. You had a Spearmint Rhino badge on the pocket, a little crest, and you had to wear a white shirt and a black tie and actually DJ like that. So it's just hosting, you know. You're just hosting basically. It's all about presentation. You're in the corner. You're playing 3-minute songs. You get a big list of girls like. At the time, again, it was crazy. Nothing like it now, but it was like 70 girls. And you'd call out Jane, you know. So it was like, stand by Jane for stage, Jane, stand by for stage. So Jane would come trotting over and she'd say, oh, can I have Usher? And can I have, you know, something else, you know. And you'd line up the songs and you'd play Usher and you'd play something else. And you put her on stage and she'd do 2 3-minute songs. So you put a girl on, 6 minutes a girl. And then you'd de-announce it. Like, there she goes, guys, there's the beautiful Jane. You know, and then stand by Claire, stand by for stage. And it's just that, which, you know, it's a very dull and, you know, different form of DJing. It's more hosting really than DJing. You know, you haven't got a dance floor. I mean, there's things that are quite make you lazy really, which is great for me. And you've got no dance floor. There's no dance floor pressure. The only requests you get are idiots that come over. And even to this day, I say, it's not a club, mate. It's lap dancing. And they're like, oh, can I have Drake? And I'm like, no requests. It's not a nightclub, you know. And they come up and say, you got a pen? And I say, no, I'm not W.H. Smith. I'm a DJ, not stationers, you know, and all this sort of stuff. And like, you know, you get nosed out all the time, especially in lap dancing. But what I saw with the lap dancing was I saw that it wasn't that I was losing nights. It's that venues were losing nights. Like in the sort of like mid-90s, sort of late 90s, like the Tuesday night would be gone. You know what I mean? The Wednesday night would be gone. Venues weren't busy enough to maintain that. So I kind of you just get used to the income and you get used to the kind of the you get used to working really. I felt like I wanted to be busy all the time. I am a grafter. I've always grafted. I'm always happy to work, you know. I'm a graft. I like to work, but I like an easy job when I get there. I like an easy gig, and lap dancing is certainly that, you know.
Let me ask you a question, because it's very clear that there's going to be a whole part of the history of the timeline that we're going to do in a part 2. We haven't finished yet. I got a couple of more questions for you. But
sorry, mate.
No.
Interviews are an hour, aren't they? I'm way over this.
No, it's cool. I am going to put the timeline aside, and I'm going to come back to a question that I was briefly talking to you about when we were checking everything before we came live. For someone who I consider to be one of the most respected DJs on the soul scene, and by many others as well, of course, forget the haters, we've all got our haters, to then be seen as, you know, doing it's not easy, it's not run of the mill, that's probably the wrong phrase, but a more commercial side of things. Did that ever, although you like the regular income, did that ever play on your, tug at your heartstrings mentally? You know, do you see these lineups and you want to be out there, you feel you should be on at the big parties?
I feel
I think I formatted a decent question out of all of those words.
Brilliant. No, it's a great question. I know exactly where you are with this question. Yeah. And I'm going to be really honest about it, as I tend to be. Yeah, I think every DJ sees lineups and thinks, oh, he's on it again and he's on it again. There's various soul events I've done and been involved with that have been, my name's regularly been associated with. And I've moved away from certain promoters and certain events for various reasons. But everybody sees it, don't they? With reference to you talking about me cringing about the King of the Bel Air and so on, and I just think that there's people that always think they could do a better job, isn't there? Or could have done a better job, because that's obviously long past history now. But I think every time a flyer comes out, people see your name on it and they think, oh, he's shit, or he's a wanker or whatever, But they don't know the history, I mean, there's probably no one that knew about on this stream tonight. There's probably no one apart from my missus who knows about the Jesus and Mary chain. So there's stuff you learn, but I think that I don't know. I'm not jealous. I don't find myself getting jealous or envious. I mean, every DJ thinks, oh, I could do that. So there's events that I feel I would suit, and I've been told that so many times, Andy. And I think I referred to one earlier on. And this is just simply because it gets mentioned all the time, and that's the Luxury Soul Weekender, the one in Blackpool, which is always January. It's always the first weekend in January. There's some good friends of mine on there that do the Busy Bee from Manchester, Paul Mack, Mike Vitti, all these DJ guys. They all do a good job. They're all up there doing it. But when that weekend is on, Chris Box as well, another fabulous guy, they're all on there. And when they perform, I'm sure they get it absolutely right. But I get told all the time by punters that weekend would really suit you. You'd really suit that weekend, with the presentation skills on the microphone and the bringing everybody together and so on and so forth, But it's a closed shop. Those places are a closed shop unless you know someone, Mike Stevens as well. I didn't mention Mike from Manchester, who's a very integral part of that night. Unless you're part of that or you get invited, you're not part of it. And my drawback, which brings you into what you said earlier on and ties this all in, actually, my drawback is that I don't really promote myself, and that's the truth. You intimated at this earlier on, Andy, with the Facebook. If you look at my Facebook, apart from the odd soul night, right? Apart from the very odd soul night, it doesn't look like I'm doing very much. It never has. But actually, behind the scenes, I'm actually working. I think I actually work more than most DJs I've ever known. I mean, I'm working tomorrow night. Tuesday night, I'm at Medusa in Birmingham. Wednesday night, I'm at Medusa in Birmingham. Thursday, I'm at Medusa in Birmingham. Friday, I'm at Medusa. And Saturday, I'm at Medusa. That's this week. That's this week's lineup. So when people do this, like, dates for your diary, every DJ does this now, these dates for your diary. I could actually do, if I wanted to take the piss, I could actually do a monotonous dates for my diary, Medusa. That's that. That's then next week it's going to be Medusa. And I've done this forever, because like the Spearmint Rhino was like the late 90s, and I've pretty much done 4 or 5 nights a week, resident nights, ever since. But I don't shout it from the rooftops. I don't talk about it on Facebook. It's lap dancing, isn't it? It's gentleman's club. I don't need to promote it. It's a different thing. You're actually not allowed to promote it, funnily enough. The Birmingham Council, they stopped flyering and so on. You actually can't, you're not actually allowed to have a semi-naked picture on a flyer or whatever. You can do a more subtle one. You can do a more classic one.
What about of the girls?
Well, yeah, you can't have a picture or a flyer or anything of the council can't find them on the floor in Broad Street type thing. You can't do that. So I've always worked. So this ties in with your excellent question, because I never really put the time aside. I don't know, maybe I'm a workaholic, but I don't, it's my own fault, really. And there's friends of mine, like Rick Starr, my very good friend, who's an excellent promoter in the Northwest. He always says to me, you don't promote yourself enough. You don't do anything. I'm like, no, you're right, I don't. And he's like, you could do a lot more. And he's absolutely right. But I don't tend to do it because I know I'm at Medusa this Friday and Saturday, and I know I'll get paid the following week or whatever. So I've always chosen that path to just keep busy, rather than I don't take nights off to socialise in soul nights. So I don't network, Andy, and of course it backfires on me. I don't get asked to do those things, But I've got a very select group of friends, Robbie J and Lovely Debbie as well. Evening, guys, if you're still on. They're another one. Robbie J and Rick are 2 people I've got a lot of time for, and they are producing very, very good quality nights at the moment, and I'm tending to be involved with those.
Hot new night at the moment, right? Doing really, really big things.
what that I'm involved in, or that?
Yeah, the parties that they've just had, and there's been a new date. Launched.
Yeah. Well, Rick puts on a fabulous thing in the Northwest in Preston, and again he's like no other promoter, because he doesn't cut corners. He spends a fortune on the sound system. It's embarrassing, actually. Spends a fortune. You won't mind me saying, it's ridiculous. He spends a fortune on the sound system. Beautiful venue. Pays proper money for the DJs as well. He's not £100 DJ man like a lot of the promoters tend to be, and they wonder why. And Robbie J, my good old friend Robbie as well. I've got a lot of time for Rob and his lovely wife Debbie, and they've who you know of course very well. And Rob's putting on a new night now as well. We're doing 2 or 3 times a year. It's called Future, and it's like new music as well. It's a lot more focused on new music as well as some of the underplayed stuff, classic soul as well, but underplayed classic soul.
Well, let me ask you, saying that Robbie is still here. He says he's still here, and right. Congratulations on that. You touched on something. Thank you for answering my question. I think you clearly answered that. Another question that we touched on before we came live, as a soul DJ playing music that's 40, 45, 50 years old, what are your thoughts on the sounds that when people are out playing out, because there's ways and ways to play. Some people will roll their eyes at the same classics being played, and yet, as I said, for me, I don't know of any other genre of music that brings out so much romanticism, with the nostalgic attachment to the 80s soul music is really powerful, right?
Yeah, no, it is. It really is. Even now, two sides to that question. The 80s soul. I think a lot of it's the production, Andy. I think it's the production values. It's just phenomenal. Some of the production. I mean, I played at Robbie's Future night recently. I played Love Zone by Billy Ocean. Now, it's one of my favourites. Now, some people will be laughing. Billy Ocean. I mean, I wasn't a fan of Get Out of My Car, Get In My Dreams, and Caribbean Queen and stuff like that. But Love Zone is. It's produced by Barry J. Eastman. I don't want to get too anal here, but Barry J. Eastman is Freddie Jackson's producer. So it sounds like a Freddie Jackson song. Now, I love Freddie Jackson. That's my thing. But that one particular Billy Ocean song sounds just like a Freddie Jackson song. So I played that, and it went down a storm. It's like, whoa, I haven't heard this for a long time. It's phenomenal. So, and I think that's down to like the production. There's such good quality. It's so big. The 80s soul is so big sounding that's why it stands the test of time. And you can still play it, but obviously, many people, especially amongst the DJ fraternity, they talk about records being overplayed and the same old rubbish and this and that. You're still playing songs from 40 years ago and all that sort of stuff. But there's a place for it. But yeah, I mean, again, ironically, this does all tie in because Robbie J went to the Weekender that we talked about, the Luxury Soul one in January, and that he came back from that and he said to me, called me up and he said, Robin, I feel like I want to put on a night with some fresh music and I want to break new music. And he said, I know you used to do that at the Belfry. People have forgotten that. And Rob was very complimentary actually that people have forgotten that. If people are critical of me, which I'm aware that they are, of course, from time to time, I know that they've forgotten their history, and Rob knows that. He respects that. Rob would say to me, I remember you playing songs when, even like Wifey, I remember when you played it at the Belfry and nobody danced because they hadn't heard it before. But then suddenly 4 weeks later, it's a banger, But we've all had that. You and Schooley and all of us, Andy, we've all had that experience. I know that you're amazing in your own genre breaking music.
Thank you for saying that. When I had a conversation with Ammo, you'll know Ammo very well.
Ammo, Punch Records, Ammo, yeah.
He was very complimentary in yourself, Sasha, Schooley, myself, all about breaking this new music back in the day. And again, you mentioned Simon in the same breath there. I don't, there's not many people can do it better than you guys. It's, it's.
I don't know about that, but
I'll stand tall and I'll say that because, as you say, I do remember, I do know my history, and I do know what you've achieved, and I do know what you're capable of, and then I do know some people who are just doing soul by numbers, and there is a big difference.
Yeah, well, the longer you stay, I've been doing this a long time now. As I say, I'm 56 now. I started at 16. Those mobile discos in the back garden was 16, so that's 40 years now, and I've done no attempt at any celebration or whatever anniversary or whatever. My Facebook's quiet as usual. But I think that back to those songs, and you know, I definitely, that's my answer to that is still that I think the production values of the 80s stuff is phenomenal. But the longer you are in the game, obviously people refer to you still playing those records. Now, of course, this is probably for another day, but again, what was in my head when you were asking about people talking about, you know, the same records and, you know, you're not tired of those same records, it's the candy thing, the candy subject. That's an endless subject about candy. DJs do Facebook posts about candy all the time, about how boring it is, and DJs that play candy or whatever, you know. I don't actually remember the last time I played candy, but, and this is where I'm going to go with this, I've got a photograph, and do you know what? I was so pleased I found this. I was rummaging around upstairs some time ago. There's actually a picture of me in 1987 or 86, whatever it is, when Candy was released. I think it's 86, is it? Can't remember. And I'm there wearing braces, I'm actually doing a school disco with belt drive decks, and you can see my Woolworths record box, and guess what? The 12-inch Candy is the one that's up in the air that I'm actually playing. I can actually see it. And the reason I'm telling you that, I mean, listen, there's millions of DJs like Bigger from London, and all these guys that might even watch this and might think, oh, I was playing it 20 years before you or whatever. All I can tell you is that when Candy was released, I bought it. I bought it in 1986, right? So I bought it and I played it, and I was playing it at discos. I wasn't playing it at the Belfry because I wasn't at the Belfry when it was released, but I was playing it in 1986. Okay? So I'm just saying that I feel that I can play Candy because I played it then. I bought it. I've always played. I've played it all the way along. But the problem is now is that it's saturated. It's overused. DJs watching this will know exactly what I'm talking about. John B. Don't Talk, Horace Brown, Things We Do for Love, you know, Wifey, Candy, Starship. Starship is ridiculous. You Are My Starship, the Daz Band. Norman Connors originally. I've got the Norman Connors 12-inch. I can find that out for you if you want.
I played that on the radio a couple of weeks ago, actually.
Great tune, stunning tune.
So you're bowing to the naysayers by not if it's a great record just because it's saturated. Don't you think Luther Vandross is saturated? You'd never question about playing.
But I don't play Never Too Much. That's the thing, you know. You know, it's that old thing. Is it you say Luther, I say Never Too Much. You say Chaka Khan, I say Ain't Nobody. You know, you say the Fatbacks, I say I Found Love. It never stops, does it? That, you know. I think I played the Masters at Work Luther at Robbie J's night recently, or somebody did. It wasn't me, I can't remember. But, you know, so you can dig deeper, can't you? But the point is that the people that are critical, Andy, these days, of people playing Candy, listen, I'm sat here now and I'm telling you it is overplayed, it is boring, everything else. But I remember playing that when it was fresher. I remember playing it when I was on my mobile disco, but I also remember playing it at the Belfry during the two-step session when I hadn't played it for, 8 months. I suddenly whacked it on with that thumping bass line that comes in, and the place went crazy. Whoa, and everyone was doing the two-step, and that then there wasn't the criticisms that you get along with it. The problem that all of us DJs have now is that when you're doing a venue, it doesn't apply to you now, I know, but when you're doing a venue that is a sort of a commercial venue, you get customers asking for it, and then you've got that problem then. Do you please the customers, or do you stick to your strict morals and your arrogance, and you think, oh, fuck that, I'm not playing Candy, But if you play it, it's going to go up. I actually get lap dancers asking me for Candy. That's something new that's happened. At Medusa, even recently, a couple of months ago, there's some girls asking me to play Candy, and I did put it on in the lap dancing. That probably is the last time I played it. I haven't played it a soul night for as long as I can remember, but I played it at the lap dancing, and everyone was at the bar doing the Candy dance, or the electric sliders, it should be called, or whatever, So that debate is an endless debate, isn't it? But that should answer your second part of your question about, what do I think about records that are known to be overplayed? I think there's a time and a place for everything. But I think all I'm trying to say is that I've got history that backs it up. I haven't just bought. I'll ask the people who are DJs now. Were you a DJ in 1986 when I bought Candy? And were you a DJ then? And were you playing Candy then? So there's two questions for you to answer amongst yourselves,
Yeah, Simon comes in and says, that would keep my tings down. He's talking about if he heard it in the
what, the lap dancers doing Candy? Yeah.
So let me just say, thank you, Stuart, for your patience. Stuart Ingram has been commenting throughout, and I've not been able to...
Hello, Stu.
I've not been able to draw reference to his comments because I didn't want to interrupt him. He says, you used to play loads of new music at the Belfry. I used to go straight to Summit Records the next day to buy the songs I like. And then he also says, how many gigs have I been to of yours? Hundreds. I've never not had a brilliant night or an afternoon. You are awesome, my friend.
Thank you, Stuart.
That's the only feedback you need to hear, because we've all got haters. You know, you're all going to have the haters, and you don't strike me as someone you lose sleep over.
You become more aware of them as time passes, though. I think it's probably through social media and so on. Like in those early days, you wouldn't people don't like what I did at the Belfry, but you wouldn't know about it, would you? You'd go home and then I'd go back the next week and play again. But no, you wouldn't know. But these days, it's the comments and all that negativity you get and all that sort of candy stuff and all that, And I think there's a few close friends of mine that understand that it's not about that with me. It never has been.
You've weighed a fair bit of emphasis on that. Is it something that does play on your mind? I just about to say you don't strike me as someone who loses much sleep over it, and yet you have mentioned it a few times.
No, I don't lose much sleep over the candy thing or anything like that at all. No, I'm quite comfortable with it. But it's nice of you. I'm so pleased you asked me that question, because it gives me a chance to air a little bit, because I see stuff all the time on social media where they're haranguing DJs for playing candy. But I just feel that some of these DJs, they probably have only been DJing 6 years or 7 years or 10 years or whatever, and it's like, you don't really know. I mean, do they know that Cameo is Tommy Jenkins, Nathan Lieutenant, and Larry Blackman? And that's not me being, big-headed. I'm just saying that's my knowledge. I know that is Cameo.
Mm-hmm.
Do people know that? Probably not. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that I've got valid reasons for playing candy. Candy's always been in my life, but I play it a lot less now than people think. I think there's an air of criticism on Facebook and social media that it's not just me. I'm not referring to me. There's other DJ friends of mine get tagged with being wifey candy DJs, but they've probably got a lot of knowledge way beyond that and understand it. So, like I said at the start, Andy, I'm not a faker. I've always been into black music and understood it and delved deep into it. I'm not. I don't pretend to be amazing on new music. There's 100 DJs that do new music much better than me. That work on radio stations, that listen to radio stations, that play all the new music. People like VC, Cliff Townsend, his friend from up that way. All these guys do new music. Paul Mack in Manchester, all these crew, they play new music probably far better than I would. But, I think I've done enough history to, support playing the older stuff as well. Still.
I think all you need to say is you've earned your stripes.
That's precisely it, really. Yeah, I could have cut that back half an hour off this conversation, probably. Can I tell you one Choice FM story that you're going to love?
Go on.
You want to have a sense of humour? So, doing the Sunday show, there's two things. There's two things you need to know for fun. Choice FM, Sunday afternoon. Do you remember the toilets? Sorry for those that don't know. The layout of the building in 95 Broad Street, the toilets were downstairs, weren't they? Do you remember the toilets were down the floor below?
Yeah.
So one Sunday afternoon, it's a little anecdote for you. One Sunday afternoon, I needed a poo desperately. I really needed a poo.
I don't know why I giggled. It's only human nature. So carry on.
So I was halfway through the show and I thought, what am I going to do? Here I go. I can't. And like those days, it wasn't many. The adverts only lasted like a minute, didn't they? Or 2 30-second ads or whatever. I didn't have time. So I thought, what's the best thing? I thought, hang on a minute. Sugar Hill Gang, Rapper's Delight. That's the one. 14 minutes, 37 seconds. I thought something like that. The full 12-inch. So I thought, right, here we go. So I introduced it, come out with another record, introduced it. Here's Sugar Hill Gang, Rapper's Delight, classic champ, Robin Holland. Choice 102.2, good afternoon. Here's Sugar Hill Gang, bang. Put it on vinyl, of course, on the decks. Thought, right, 14 minutes, no problem. So I went downstairs. So it's broadcasting live across the city of Birmingham and the West Midlands. Went downstairs, went to the toilet, did my business. I was probably 7 or 8 minutes. I don't think I even had a phone then, so it wouldn't have been distracted at all. 7 or 8 minutes in, I thought, okay, right, go back upstairs, creep back upstairs, open the studio door. To my horror, the song has stuck about a minute in.
I said
it's literally, I can see my heart. I can literally see the needle jumping. It's going a hip, a hip, a hip, a hip, a hip, a hip.
Fantastic.
While I'm having a poo at Choice FM, the whole city of Birmingham and the West Midlands is enjoying the same bar of the Sugar Hill Gang, Rapper's Delight. I said a hip, a hip, a hip, a hip, a hip. And you know what the best thing is? You're going to love this. You remember the phone lines? The phone and the phone lines?
Yeah.
Well, if I could shit myself, I literally did shit myself. And I remember budging the needle on like we did as DJs. I budged the needle on over the bit of dirt that was on the bloody vinyl. And I put the next song on. I was really embarrassed, obviously. I put the next song on. I don't think I introduced it. I think I played a jingle and played the next song. And then the phone line was lit up. And I thought, here we go. And I answered it. And it was the funniest call ever. I don't know who it was to this day. It was a guy. And all he said to me was cool as anything. It was brilliant. He picked up the phone. I said, hello, Choice FM. And he went, Robin. I said, hello, how you doing? He went, I've driven from Yardley to Edgbaston in the time that record's been playing. While that record's been stuck, I've driven from Yardley to Edgbaston. And that's all he said. It's brilliant.
Brilliant.
I was so embarrassed. And then the other thing, Schoolie's going to love this as well. The other thing is, I don't know if you remember this, I mean, you might do. Do you remember there was a plug board? There was a plug board on the right-hand side, underneath whatever it was, the decks or whatever. And but the reason you might remember it, there was a sign on it saying, do not use, never use this plug. It was really strict, never use this plug. Well, when I was doing the overnights, right, I used to get fed up with the mess that Big John used to leave. I'm sure it was Big John, bless him. He used to leave rubbish and crisp packets and God knows what all over the floor and everything else, like, because he finished at like 1 a.m. And I used to get fed up with it because I'd driven from Redditch, where I was living, and I was doing the show, and I got like 4 hours ahead of me, and I was standing around all this mess, and I thought, oh, and I remember there was a vacuum downstairs, the cleaner's vacuum at the bottom of the stairs, and like all the plug sockets were filled apart from this one, weren't they? So I thought, oh, don't matter. What's that? Don't use that plug. Sure, it's fine. Anyway, so I went all the way down to the bottom of the building, near the front door, opened up the cupboard. I carried the vacuum all the way up the stairs. This is while I'm on air, by the way, don't forget. And I thought, I'll sod this. I can't stand this mess. So I plugged the vacuum in, hit the switch, bang, station dead. I took the station off air completely for the remainder of the night. Choice FM through the night. And you know, there was about 3 hours to go as well. I was only about an hour into the show. Choice FM went off air completely because of me plugging the vacuum in. And I haven't told many people that. So there's obviously a dodgy socket, and it literally took everything off. And do you know something? It went off all morning, and nobody came out. It was Brodie Swain driving in for 6 o'clock in the morning. He said he was driving in, and there was nothing. He got the radio on in the car. There was no music, nothing going on until he got in, and obviously probably knew how to reset it or something. But I had no idea, no idea whatsoever.
That's just broken. That's just broken a nightmare of mine. I've had that recurring nightmare on many occasions. The heavens have just opened here, by the way. Every time I open the mic, the rain is battling down on the ceiling. Anyway, back to your fantastic anecdotes. Robin, I don't know what to say. I could sit here for hours and continue listening to this. We're getting more and more people coming in. Go on then.
I've got a great Dwight York one from the Belfry. So, Dwight York, famous footballer, I'm sure people know him. Katie Price's ex, Harvey's dad. He used to go to the Belfry quite a lot on a Monday night, obviously a soul guy. And because the Villa training ground, the Aston Villa training ground, Bodymore Heath, it's just around the corner from the Belfry, literally like half a mile. So we used to get the Villa players in, and, you know, Mark Bosnich, the goalie, and all this sort of stuff. And you're not really a football guy, I don't think. But anyway, so Dwight York, right? He was just sold from Aston Villa to Manchester United. I think it was 1996 or something, or 86, I can't remember. Anyway, whatever it was. Anyway, I'll have to look it up. Anyway, he'd just been signed. How much he sold for? He sold for about 13 million, which was a massive amount at the time. It was a huge sale at the time. Not now, obviously, but at the time, 13 million pounds. Dwight York had gone from Villa to Manchester United. About 5 days later, he was at the Belfry on a Monday night. He was there, right? He'd been there before, but this is the particular fun night. And when I finished on a Monday, I used to have to take my invoice. I had a paper invoice. I used to have to take it to the hotel for the accounts department. So I drive up from I literally get in my car and I just drive from where I'd parked by the club up to the hotel, a few hundred yards, being lazy. So I put it in. Anyway, this one particular Monday night, Dwight York had been in there and he was pissed as a newt, absolutely fucked, right? And as I drove down, basically the hotel was the other way from the main gate. So basically the club and then the hotel and the gates were the other way. So I went to the hotel, handed my invoice in, turned the car around, drove back and slowly drove past the club. And there used to be a red phone box outside, but the old BT phone box. And Dwight York was leaning against the box on his own. Everyone else had gone, leaning against like that, lean up star, proper pissed out of his head, right? And obviously, I know it's Dwight York, don't I? Because he's famous and he's just been on the news. He's transferred to Man United. So I pull up in my blue Orion, my shiny F-Reg Ford Orion, right? So it must have been the 80s or something. I wound the window down with a handle, and all I said was, "All right, Dwight, you okay, mate?" Because obviously I knew who he was. And I've actually only recently realised why he did what he did. You know what's coming, don't you? You worked it out. Anyway, I wound the window. I was just checking on him. Wound the window down. I didn't pull up right by him. I was still on the road, and he was sort of like a little lay-by bit that you go in, for the front of the club. And I wound the window down. I just shouted at him. I said, "You're right, Dwight. You okay?" And without a word, he walked over to me, opened the back door, and got in my car, and thought I was a fucking taxi.
I've got a few Dwight York stories.
So you know what I did? I acted like a taxi. I thought I could do with a bit of dollar here. So I thought, it was amazing actually, Andy. I'm surprised at myself actually. I was very quick thinking. I actually thought to myself, oh, I know what's going on here. So he closed the door. I wound the window back up and I looked in my mirror. I said, "Where to, Dwight?" And he went, "Hyatt." He just said Hyatt Hotel, which of course actually I lived in sort of Hales Owen way. It was actually on the way back for me. So I drove Dwight York from the Belfry, back down the motorway, down the M6, into Birmingham,
to Broad
pulled
Street.
up outside the Hyatt. And it's crazy, because I was looking in my mirror, I was just thinking, I was just looking in my mirror thinking, my God, I've got £13 million worth of Manchester United football in the back of my Ford Orion. It's just weird at the time. And I pulled up outside the Hyatt and I thought, I've got to finish this off. I can't just do it half-heartedly. So, and I said, and he was asleep by then. He was crashed out asleep on the back of the seat. And I got out of the car. I opened the back door, and I said, "Dwight, we're here, mate, at the Hyatt." And he went, "Oh." He went, "How much?" I said, "Just call it 20 quid." And he got 20 quid out and gave it me. And I happily took that. Don't you worry. Oh yes. So I actually got a taxi fare off Dwight York from the Belfry to the Hyatt Hotel. So
amazing.
Yeah, that's the sort of
so from an almost to you nailed it. That's your claim to fame. Right.
Well, one off, yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, listen,
sure.
Listen. We're going to be here all night. We could be here all night, but I am going to draw this to a close, and I am going to say that we are definitely going to do another conversation. Maybe we'll get Simon on, and we'll talk more stories, and we can find out. Funny. We can find out about the demise of the Belfry, the Bel Air. We can talk more about your love affair with the music. We can also discuss how you jumped through a million hoops to honour me when I asked you to come and DJ for me in Spain. On the one occasion, there would have been a hell of a lot more, but we'll talk about that another time. If you'll come back on, mate, I would love to have you back on again.
Oh, that's lovely, Andy. Thank you. We should have had a 3-hour chat before we did this, shouldn't we? Really?
No, this has been perfect. At the end of the day, it's like, well, people who have invested in the conversation will have taken a hell of a lot from it, and some people will dip in and out. And at the end of the day, it's documented for all time now. And there's things that you won't have had the opportunity to share before. Yeah. And I'm honoured that I was able to hear it from you, mate.
Fantastic. It's been great fun. I've got a few more hours if you've got any more time.
I could be here all night, but you know what? It's actually, the rains are really insane, and I'm worried that my electric's going to trip at any time, like your Choice FM days.
Yeah, yeah, spot on. Well, listen, thanks everybody for tuning in and commenting. If you've done so, I really appreciate it. Thank you for showing some interest.
There's been a load of comments. Go back and read them all. And as I say to people, and I've just been kicked off of YouTube because of some copyright infringements. But as soon as I get back on, I think tomorrow this will be loaded and it'll be there for you to share. To all
right, brilliant. Thanks, Andy. Thanks so much, mate. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, buddy. I've said it to you many times, but I do truly love you.
Bless you. Likewise. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Take care, mate. Brilliant. Wow. Like Robin said, we could have really spoken all evening. I would have been happy to speak to him all night. But, 2 hours and 5 minutes into that, and there is still a lot more to come. So we definitely do need another conversation. Let me say good evening, Lionel. As I did say earlier, I saw you commenting. I didn't want to interrupt, as has Joanne. Stuart, Aisha, good evening, my love. How are you? And any of the rest of the ladies, Helen, Trudy, Elaine, of course, Joanne, if you managed to catch this, and all the rest of the crew, all the Birmingham soul boys and girls. Wasn't it great to hear his story? Okay, so next week, Andy Compton from the Rurals, one of the most prolific producers out of the UK, will be talking about the untold amounts of albums that he has released on his own label and other people's labels, and that's going to be an interesting conversation. If you want to find out some of the more in-depth conversations that I've had, go and check out youtube.com/DJ Andy Ward, and if you subscribe there, you'll get notifications every time I go live, and take a look through some of my histories. I have a very insightful series of chats that I've called Brum as Fuck, and Robin is most definitely as brum as fuck as they come, and he's a big part of a lot of our histories, and his legacy has most definitely been laid down. Okay, folks, if you have recently subscribed to the channel, I say thank you. You can see the names on the screen here. On the right-hand side, a scrolling list of people who support me on a monthly basis. Thank you to all my Access crew. And in the daytime, I am keeping myself busy making graphics, building websites, and putting social media videos together. Do get in touch if you're interested in any of that. Thank you all, guys. I'll catch you soon.